Good morning, everyone. Hello, welcome. We'll be starting in a few minutes, just the time to have a few more colleagues here with us. Give us a couple of minutes. Thank you. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to World Environment Day celebrations. We will be starting now the session. I'm Flavia Reale. I will be guiding you through the agenda today and moderating session 2. I'm ESCAP Environmental Management Officer and Innovation. So today we are celebrating World Environment Day, and the theme is generation restoration. We'll be looking into the importance of ecosystems restoration and practical solutions. So I'm happy to welcome to the stage our colleagues. Yes. If we can have the slide on the agenda, thank you. We will be now today going through restoring nature and lives in the decade of ecosystems restoration. And also in session 2, we'll be looking into getting ready for the dry years. We'll have a last session that is our flagship event that is closed by a fun moment, a tradition now, which is a fun quiz on ecosystem restoration. So please stay with us until the very end. There's very nice prizes for the winners. And we will be closing the event with a lunch kindly offered by UNEP outside of this meeting room. Now, with this, I'm happy to give the floor to the colleagues from UNEP and ESCAP who have been jointly organizing this World Environment Day. Please, Makiko, join us here, Makiko Yashiro, the Regional Coordinator for Nature Action at UNEP, as well as Hitomi Rankin, the Chief of Environmental Affairs section at ESCAP. Please join us here for some opening remarks, please. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and good morning to all of you. Today is the World Environment Day, the largest international day dedicated to the environment that has been celebrated since 1973. And on behalf of UNEP Asia and the Pacific Office, I warmly like to welcome you all to our regional celebration of the World Environment Day. I'm very happy to see you gathered here today for an interactive morning with presentations, videos, and quizzes, diving deeper into what this year's theme for World Environment Day, restoring land, halting desertification, and building drought resilience, means for our region. And we extend our sincere appreciation to ESCAP team for their collaboration in co-hosting this event, as well as support provided by our partners, including FAO and IUCN, in organizing a session focused on the UN Decade on Ecosystem Restoration. The Asia-Pacific region, as you know, is exceptionally rich in biodiversity and ecosystems. The tropical forests of Southeast Asia, the reefs of the Coral Triangle, the temperate forests, and the large river basins found in the region are among the most unique on Earth. However, as you know also, these ecosystems are threatened throughout the region due to expanding and increasingly intense agriculture, land use change, and infrastructure development, and many other factors. And the region is also being significantly affected by land degradation, drought, and water insecurity, giving negative impacts in terms of food supply, rural livelihoods, water supply, and disaster risk reduction. So in this context, World Environment Day is an opportunity for us to demonstrate to the global community that these continued declines in biodiversity and ecosystems, as well as unsustainable consumption of natural resources and increasing droughts, can be addressed through the scaled-up actions to restore our land and nature, and through the collective efforts of governments, civil society, youth, businesses, and individuals everywhere. So we hope that various successful initiatives that will be showcased at today's event will inspire different stakeholders in the region to scale up their efforts towards protecting, restoring, and sustainably managing our land and nature. We can all be part of the solution. And on the occasion of the World Environment Day, I would really encourage everyone to take the global movement of generation restoration and act together to protect our land and our future. Thank you very much.
So good morning, everyone, and welcome to the celebration of the World Environment Day this year. We are here because degradation of terrestrial ecosystems results in the loss of benefits, real benefits for the economy and for society, right? We know that at least 50% of the region is still living in rural areas, and we know that most of the production of food comes from our small farmers, right? So the degradation of land and increasing water insecurity impacts our economies, impacts our societies in very important ways. One of the functions of ESCAP is to follow up on the progress of the SDGs. And when we look at the data on the SDG 15, Life on Land, we see that 13.9% of land areas is protected as compared with the 30% target, which has been set under the Kunming-Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework. Even though more lands are being protected, there's still a long way to go, right? We see positive trends in reforestation and afforestation and evidence of increasing commitment from countries. So there is some positive momentum, right? We see also that 27 countries have committed to setting land degradation neutrality targets through the UNCCD. This is really, I think this is very important development in terms of advance on policy for protection. And we also see that transboundary collaboration on protection is increasing, all right? Now, the challenges are that progress is slowing and the pressures are increasing, as Makiko mentioned, right? And in some subregions more than others, right? We know also that climate change is an additional pressure that we need to take account of when we put in place our policies. And we need to really look at this issue of health, because our health is connected very intimately with the health of the ecosystems. And with respect to that factor, there are important gender dimensions and dimensions with respect to inequality. We know that when land tenure is secure, farmers take better care of the land. right, for example, but both large farms and small farms are implicated in increasing pressures regarding land degradation. We need to ensure engagement of communities and indigenous peoples in biodiversity conservation and protection. And we need to recognize the link between land and sea. So the health of our coastal ecosystems, coral reefs, seagrasses, all of these ecosystems which are important for carbon sequestration really depends on what we do on land, right? Nature-based solutions are an integral part of the response. I want to just point very briefly to key results from our foresight work. And one aspect of it, or one outcome of it, was that reinvigorated multilateralism is an important part of the response, and this World Environment Day is intended to contribute to that. So 4 main areas were identified: information and data sharing for transparency and evidence for action, accountability measures, coordinated, networked, and participatory action, economic, system, and financing interventions, and finally, solidarity. This is really, really critical. When we look at this challenge of restoring lands and securing water, we really need to look at who needs to be part of the picture. So in closing, I'd like to welcome all of you to this conversation and to wish you all a very warm World Environment Day today. Thank you.
Thank you, Tommy. Thank you, Makiko. I'm now happy to invite for some welcoming remarks the acting UN resident coordinator, Mr. Renaud Meyer, who's been serving the UN for over 2 decades. We're happy to have you with us, Renaud.
Thank you. Well, I don't think I'm going to need this little thing. There we go. Very good morning, everyone, and happy World Environment Day to all of you. Thank you for reminding me how old I am, but let's just avoid that. As acting resident coordinator for the UN Thailand team, it gives me great pleasure to welcome you all for this celebration of World Environment Day, an annual event that is always welcomed. And every year, despite our calls, we see, as we've just heard from the 2 previous speakers, continuous degradation, as if we just would not believe what is happening when we can actually just open our eyes and see it every day. This year's theme on land restoration, desertification, and drought resilience are very much timely, as they are at the heart of the triple planetary crisis of climate change, nature loss, and pollution, 3 phenomena that we can observe here, unfortunately, in Thailand. And I'd like to commend both UN Environment and ESCAP for hosting today's event that brings us together both here in this auditorium and online. Raising awareness, calling for action like we are doing here today is critical, as nature is suffering and action cannot be delayed. Over 3 billion people are negatively affected by desertification worldwide. 2/5 of the world's land is already considered degraded, and 55 million people are affected by drought every year. And it goes without saying, like the previous speaker highlighted, that land and soil are indispensable to climate stability in our economies, as healthy soils, forests, and grasslands are crucial carbon sinks, and 1/4 of the world's population depends on the agricultural sector for their livelihoods. Land, let's not forget, is the most biodiverse habitat on the planet, with nearly 60% of all species living in our soils. Here in Asia Pacific, we have the privilege of having 2/3 of the world's population and an incredible rich biodiversity. However, if we look further, we see that the majority of the people in this region live in cities, which are the biggest producers of global waste and greenhouse gas emissions, resulting in unmanaged urbanization, rapid industrialization, and a changing climate that is unfortunately accelerating droughts. The region is also facing increasing impacts of water stress and land degradation due to extensive agriculture and deforestation. These factors have had a devastating effect of reducing the biodiversity of our ecosystem, affecting climate resilience, food security, and health in Asia Pacific. In Thailand, the agricultural sector is affected by drought, which impacts food supplies, energy production, and the wider economy, underpinning the need for mitigation measures to improve resilience and livelihoods. To address this, the country is prioritizing restoring ecosystems to mitigate the impacts of natural disasters and climate change in its national strategy. And overall, Thailand aims to increase its forest cover to 40% of its land area by 2036. Through the UN Decade of Ecosystem Restoration, solutions are being implemented for the protection and revival of ecosystems around the world, including, of course, here in Asia and the Pacific, to increase drought and climate resilience and reduce land degradation. By restoring land and productive systems, humanity can secure a nature-positive, net-zero future and safeguard a healthy planet for all. It also makes eminent economic sense, as the return on every dollar spent on restoration is estimated up to $30 to ecosystem services. The good news, and let's finish with that, is that between 765 million to 1 billion hectares of land globally have been earmarked for restoration. I want to impart that each of us can be and should be a part in conserving and restoring land. We can do this every day by choosing what we consume and what kind of activity we have and we leave behind. More broadly, our engagement here today is critical and should result in many takeaway and best practices that we can all learn from and translate both in our work and our daily life. I thank you for your attention, and I wish you a very happy, despite what we see outside, World Environment Day. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Renaud. So we are now ready to start the first session of the day, which will be looking specifically at the importance of ecosystems restoration, as well as practical solutions from around our region that are inspiring. So I'm happy to mention that this event, this session, was co-organized by UNEP, FAO, the Food and Agriculture Organization, as well as the International Union on Conservation for Nature. Let me welcome the lead of the next session, Dr. Dindo Campilan, who's the Regional Director for Asia and Hub Director for Oceania at IUCN. Dr. Campilan has more than 20 years of experience Asia-wide as Senior Program Management and Leader in Agriculture, Food and Environment Research and Development with the Consultative Group on International Agriculture Research, the UN, and now with IUCN. Dr. Campilan, the floor is yours.
Good morning, everyone. I just realized there's a technical glitch and some of the slides from my office are not ready. Anyway, so the World Environment Day is always a good opportunity to reconnect for us. But I must say it's also a nice excuse to actually meet friends. Looking around the room, it's like a reunion of friends. And you know, most of us are based in Bangkok, but in our everyday busy lives, we hardly get to see each other. So thank you for this opportunity. Now let's welcome our colleagues to this special session and the first session on restoring nature and lives. And while they're trying to retrieve the slides, I might just as well go ahead with the overview of what is expected in the next 60 minutes or so. The Decade of Ecosystem Restoration started in 2021. So we're almost at the midpoint now. So rather than talk about what we started with, it'd be good to take stock and analyze what have we accomplished, what have been the challenges, and more importantly, what can we do in the remaining years to 2030? We started in 2021 with a definition of ecosystem restoration. And since the slide isn't there, I'm going to read it out just to remind ourselves what we promised at the beginning. A UNEP 2021 definition: ecosystem restoration means preventing, halting, reversing degradation of ecosystems worldwide to regain ecological functionality, improve productivity and capacity of ecosystems to meet the needs of society. My first question, for example, is what have we learned since the time we said restoration? Today, 4 years later, do we now understand and operationalize what it is? Is it to regenerate? Is it to regrow? Is it to revitalize? we'll hear from our speakers today if we now have better knowledge from the ground on what it means. But I think most importantly is also to take note that the world has changed since 2021. There are now many changes, drivers in international multilateral policies that they weren't there when we started the decade. So those are important additionalities that we need to consider today as we mark the pathway in the next years and on the road to 2030. We know what are the barriers. I just, again, returned to Bangkok from a series of visits to the countries. Many of the countries that we partner with are aware of what we need to do, what are the barriers we're here about here today. But I think the best way to celebrate the World Environment Day is not to spend the day complaining and whining about the barriers, which we know, but rather offering new insights on how to overcome them. I'll give you a good example, because yesterday, just at a meeting with one of the ministries, I think many countries where we go to now say, okay, World Environment Day or the environmental concerns are not just the sole task of the environment ministries. It's also agriculture, it's development planning. We even need to reach out to the finance ministries. So everybody talks about whole of government approach. It's a term now that I hear very, very often. But actually, many of us don't know yet how to actually implement whole of government approach. Governments love to talk about it. How do you bring finance and science and technology and development planning environment? It would be very interesting today if we can offer something to our partner countries on how to operationalize that in the context of ecosystem restoration. At a higher level, this is also a very timely event because, again, this is months away from all the Rio Convention COPs. And many of the countries we partner and we serve are now again asking all of us, what can we do to help them prepare? For example, well, the first one would be in Cali in Colombia. Right. One of the things that we I think are aware of, that's been the challenge, we talk about ecosystem restoration, is how to integrate it in the national strategies and plans for the 3 conventions. I think we have been a bit successful already, and we're going to hear today. But personally, what I've found most challenging is that the 3 documents, whether it's the NDCs or the NBSAPs, are often prepared by countries in parallel. The documents don't talk to each other. And so oftentimes you get invited to these 3 different dialogues or planning. I think we have a responsibility to remind all our partner countries and ourselves that, look, we can't have 3 separate documents on climate, biodiversity, or land health. It is our responsibility that they're all interconnected, and they should be cross-referencing with each other. And that's important because we are helping countries and our region in preparing for the upcoming COPs. And that's where I said at the beginning, in 2021, we didn't have the GBF, we didn't have the biodiversity plan. In 2021, we didn't have yet the COPs like in Dubai a few months ago, where we debate again on operationalizing loss and damage. So these are the new drivers or the new enablers or disablers on how we rethink ecosystem restoration today. For IUCN, and we are a very proud partner of the decade, we have been also learning along the way on how to do this better, particularly on many of our partnerships with FAO and with UNEP. We talk about the forest landscape restoration, FLR, which has been a key vehicle for us at the global but also regional level. We have established partnerships across the region, whether it's on landscapes or forest or marine. We've been successfully organizing events and promoting ecosystem restoration across. And I'm looking at Chila here in front. So, of course, I have to highlight one of our key partnerships, which started, it's now a year, Chila, right? For Jeff 8, IUCN and FAO RAP here, co-leading the impact program on primary forest biome. I think it's a nice example of how 2 organizations can work together, leading a regional initiative and impact program in primary forest, but also bringing countries together. I hope we can have more of that. In terms of beyond the forest, which is the usual way we think of ecosystem restoration, there will be many other examples, and we're going to hear today from 3 flagships as examples of what they have done. In IUCN, we've also looked beyond the terrestrial on freshwater and marine. And for freshwater, here in the region, again, we've worked with many of you, UNDP, UNEP, the other national organizations, not only to think about ecosystem restoration in the rural or terrestrial context, but even down and looking at ecosystem services provisioning, such as urban ecosystems. So I think that's one area that we need to be conscious of, that ecosystem restoration isn't just about the forest or the mountains. It's about people, even for us living in this big city of Bangkok. We have also been very successful in launching new initiatives around coastal and marine. Not only the transboundary work that we have, Bay of Bengal, for example, but also I'm reminded that as we talk about plastic pollution, marine plastics, in a few months, the world's supposed to agree on a new treaty on pollution, and plastics particularly. What can we do? How can we connect ecosystem restoration to all this negotiation? How can we influence? How can we mainstream? How can we let the negotiators understand that ecosystem restoration can be a framework towards understanding how to address the issue of plastics and plastics pollution? And because we are in ESCAP, I have to mention a collaboration we've all been doing, which is around nature-based solutions. It was really very fascinating for me when I first saw the ESCAP report reviewing the NDCs, where 43 of 48 countries said their NDCs will be delivered through NBS, nature-based solution. Fantastic. The problem is, if you see the ESCAP report, only half of those actually said how. And even only 1/3 of them said, what is the target? So with ESCAP leading the way now, we're in the next months, as countries update their NDCs, we're already working together to help these countries improve, enhance their NDCs, particularly on the metrics of nature-based solutions. What is the target? What is the baseline? But it's inspiring that they already started by saying we will deliver the NDCs partly through NBSs. So we look forward to the partnership with ESCAP and all of you. Finally, and as an introduction, we will be listening today to a set of recommendations, starting off with Makiko and also Shaila, and then inviting our colleagues who are joining online for 3 flagship presentations, focusing on the key recommendations, but I think more importantly, overall, and as we say in IUCN, just as we talk about reimagining conservation, today, how do we reimagine ecosystem restoration? And with that, and on more, I think, IUCN note, let me also invite you to our Regional Conservation Forum this September, just weeks away. We're going to be taking this discussion, including here, as the regional community of IUCN, our state members, our NGO partners, local communities, debate on what would be the priorities for IUCN, not only in the next 20 years, but programmatically in the next 4 years, which the region of IUCN here will take to our World Congress next year and will set the framework for what we do. So this is an invitation for all of you, and I'm happy to be here, being back with you and to see all the new friends. With that, let me now invite, it's going to be Makiko first, right? So it's a joint presentation, but I believe Makiko will start and then Shaila will follow. Over to you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Lindo, and apologies for technical glitches. We were not able to present Dr. Lindo's beautiful presentation file, but we'll make sure that we'll share that with participants later on. So I'd like to request for the slide to be projected. And it is my pleasure to make this presentation jointly with Shaila from FAO to provide a very quick overview of the UN Decade on Ecosystem Restoration. Next slide, please. And just to highlight some of the background, in 2019, the UN General Assembly adopted a resolution and designated the years 2021 to 2030 as the UN Decade on Ecosystem Restoration. And the goal of the decade is to prevent, stop, and reverse the continued degradation and loss of ecosystems worldwide. And it focuses on 3 strategic pillars: building a global movement, accelerating action on the ground, and monitoring progress. And the UNGA tasked the FAO and together with UNEP to co-lead this implementation in collaboration with secretariats of Rio Conventions and other partners. And the UN Decade runs till 2030, which is also the deadline for SDGs, and the timeline scientists have identified as the last chance to prevent the climate change and biodiversity loss. Next slide, please. So as shown in this slide, there are over 250 partners around the world that participate in the UN Decade global network across different categories of partners, and the network is still growing. And we look forward to having more partners across Asia and the Pacific region to join this network. Next slide, please. And to support the implementation of the UN Decade, the UN Decade Action Plan was launched in March 2023, which presents 30 challenges across 12 themes. And this action plan enables us to move the strategy to concrete actions and really serve as a tool for all partners to collaborate and lead the implementation of the UN Decade and contribute to global goals such as Kunming-Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework and the SDGs. Next slide, please. And as you can see, the action plan covers themes that focuses on key topics such as biodiversity, climate change, businesses, cities, communities, education, finance, and so on and so forth. Next slide, please. The UN Decade also has a very strong focus on advocacy, communication, and awareness. And through various communication efforts, including on the World Environment Day, including today, with the hashtag Generation Restoration, efforts have been made to connect global partners to local implementers, reach stakeholders across the society and the globe, and strengthen ownership and celebrate existing efforts by all stakeholders. And there are various communications assets that can be utilized for campaigns and outreach activities, including videos, social media cards, and messages, and they are all accessible on the UN Decade website. I think from this slide, I'd like to hand it over to Shaira.
Yes, good morning also from my side. So continuing on the World Restoration flagships, now countries have already promised to restore about 1 billion hectares as part of their global commitments of biodiversity, climate, etc. However, very little is known. Please, we need to go back to the world flagships, please. Very little is known about the progress or the quality of restoration. And this is why the UN Decade on Ecosystem Restoration is honoring world restoration flagships, honoring thereby best examples of large-scale and long-term ecosystem restoration in any country or region, embodying the 10 restoration principles of the UN Decade. Currently, there are 17 world restoration initiatives recognized, including 7 in the Asia-Pacific region. And I'd like to mention them since there are only 7 so far. Pakistan's Living Indus Initiative, the Sri Lanka's Mangrove Restoration Initiative, the Terai Arc Landscape Initiative in Nepal, the Ganges River Rejuvenation Initiative in India, the Small Islands Development States Initiative, which includes Vanuatu, the Building with Nature Initiative in Indonesia, and the Shanshui Initiative in China. Now, these initiatives declared as World Restoration flagships are then eligible to receive UN-backed promotion, advice, and funding. And the last call, I mean, these are now repeatedly happening, the calls for nominating new flagships, the last call closed last week. And I understand we have received over 200 nominations, including around 40 from this region. So this is really nice to see that this is taking up quite nicely. Next slide, please. Now, coming to the task force on best practices, that was established under the leadership of FAO and is a collaborative effort of currently 400 members from more than 170 organizations focused on capacity development and knowledge dissemination activities to help achieve the vision of the UN Decade. Next one, please. In terms of achievements over the past 2 years, key outputs include the development of several knowledge products developed really in a highly participatory approach. I just mentioned the amount of members of partners working towards the common goal. Now, I would like to highlight the 10 principles for ecosystem restoration, which is applicable across all biomes, sectors, and regions for achieving the highest level of recovery possible through restoration projects. And I'd like to mention the standards of practice, which offer key recommendations on how to apply the 10 principles across the entire restoration process and across a broad array of ecosystems and restoration initiatives under the decade. Next slide, please. In addition, during 2021-2022, the task force also conducted a global capacity needs assessment for restoration and prepared a capacity, knowledge, and learning action plan for the decade. That one proposes the 8 capacity and knowledge development initiatives to address those capacity gaps of different stakeholder groups according to the results of the capacity needs assessment. And from now until 2030, the task force will undertake efforts to establish partnerships and mobilize resources in order to enable the implementation of the 8 initiatives. Next one, please. Moreover, to facilitate the knowledge sharing among practitioners, the task force has developed a framework for the dissemination of good practices for ecosystem restoration. And that embedded in the framework for ecosystem restoration monitoring, it allows for one, the documentation of good practices from restoration initiatives previously registered in FIRM, and secondly, the dissemination of good practices through a common search engine to link and facilitate access to good practices collected from various allied platforms, including the GoPro 4, Panorama Solutions, and VOCAT besides the FIRM. Next one, please. Finally, FAO and the Convention on Biological Diversity are collaborating with numerous partners to implement the roadmap for the Global Biodiversity Framework Target 2. To recall, Target 2 of the Kunming-Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework, or the Biodiversity Plan, stipulates that by 2030, at least 30% of the degraded ecosystems are restored. Now, to support the planning and reporting on Target 2, the roadmap includes the following elements. First, to finalize the indicator methodology to provide guidance on indicator qualifiers and include case studies from pilot countries. Conduct capacity development awareness raising to CBD parties to align with Target 2. Develop the framework for ecosystem restoration monitoring consistent with reporting needs to integrate existing data on areas under restoration. And provide post-CBD COP16, so after the next COP, support towards a national report. With that, I come to the end of my presentation, and I'd like to take the opportunity to thank once again UNEP and ESCAP for convening and organizing the event today, including to promote the UN Decade on Ecosystem Restoration. Thank you very much and happy World Environment Day.
So Makika and Shaila have introduced the flagships, and 3 of them we'll be hearing today. Just building on what Shaila's mentioned about the GBF and the different targets, because as you may have heard from Nairobi just days ago about the selection of the regional centers as an extension of the Secretariat, and we in ASEAN are really very happy that we, for example, in Asia, are going to be the CBD, Secretariat Extension, as a regional center of excellence, and as a one-stop shop, but also building on and also amplifying what's already working together. And with that, we are very excited to start with the first flagship today, which is very close to IUCN's heart, because it's going to talk about all the species that we need to conserve as part of ecosystem restoration. And so we'll first have the Terai Arc landscape from Nepal, and I believe we'll start with a video.
मार्ग पग भन्छ यसलाई अनि यो देखेपछि यो बाघको एरिया हो भनेर सबैले थाहा हुनु पर्यो।
Tarai Arc landscape, it has all the mega species, yet has a sea of people.
मान्छेलाई चाहिँ एकदम गाह्रो हुन्छ सब थोक जङ्गलमै हुने अनि जङ्गल जानै पर्ने अनि फेरि अट्याक गरिहाल्छ
आज हात्ती गैरा शिकार चोरी शिकारमा लोप गयो भने हामी भावीपछि के देख्छ त्यो फोटो मात्रै देख्छ
The species like tigers and rhinos are actually vanishing from the world. The core of Tarai Arc is that conservation and development can coexist. And I think that is something that Nepal has delivered.
अनि गस्ती हामी अब कहिले महिनामा एकचोटि हुन्छ कहिले दुईचोटि आइराख्छौँ अनि वनहेरालुको त नियमित हरेक दिन नियमित जङ्गलमा आउने अनि आज बाघ यता गछ आज गैँडा यता गछ आज हात्ती उठाबाट पुरै बगालै अनि निकुञ्जतिर गछ सबै हामीलाई खबर गर्छन् वन्यजन्तु पनि हामी जस्तै प्राणी हुन् यिनीहरू पनि हामीले मात्रै बाँचेर के गर्ने यी वन्यजन्तु पनि बस्नुपर्छ यो पनि हाम्रो देशको सम्पत्ति हुन्
Tarai is only about 17% of the total area of the country, but consists of 50% of Nepal's population.
Tarai Arc landscape is one of the most important landscapes in the world. It has all the mega species that stands boundary between India and Nepal, with elephants, rhinos, and tigers, and so many of them. And at the same time, it has lots of population pressure. Tigers being on the top of the food chain. When you are protecting tigers, you are protecting so many species. When the tigers are not there, then the herbivores population will explode, and slowly they will ruin the whole habitat. Because of all the conservation challenges and development challenges, the Tarai Arc was born. And one of the most important initiatives was to restore the corridors, the connectivities within Nepal, and more importantly, north-south with India, so the wildlife can genetically disperse. And it becomes so successful. Now the corridors are not only facilitating the movement of wildlife, they are becoming a source where the animals can actually residing in it.
Thank you very much. Or is there a technical glitch? Yes. Okay, thank you. And joining us online is Dr. Ananta Bandari, Head of Forest and Landscape Program from WWF Nepal. Dr. Bandari, can you hear us?
Yes, thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you for joining us, and greetings from all of us here in Bangkok. It's very inspiring to see the work that you're doing in the last places where tigers, rhinos, elephants coexist. For all of us in the context of ecosystem restoration, what we're really interested to know is what is new and different with this initiative, given all the species conservation work that has been done, particularly in enabling and upscaling biodiversity conservation in the landscape of the Tarai Arc.
Thank you. Thank you. Good morning to all. And thank you very much for UNEP for giving this space for the Tarai Arc landscape in this very special occasion today. So Tarai Arc landscape, as we see on the video, is a transboundary landscape distributed in Nepal and India. It is a biodiversity hotspot in the region and is a home to endangered mega species like tiger, elephant, rhinos. And most importantly, it is a very hugely populated area in the country. We adopted integrated landscape approach to conserve biodiversity and restoration in the Tarai Arc landscape for the last 2.5 decades. So the continuous conservation efforts of the government, local communities, and the civil society resulted in the achievement of so many conservation outcomes. For example, forest area has been increased, corridor has been restored, and the restored corridors are functional in terms of providing ecosystem services flow and movement of wildlife, not only within the country, but from India to Nepal and Nepal to India. So the conservation efforts that the initiatives that resulted in the increase of population of the tigers and rhinos as well. The Nepal has achieved almost, increasing the population almost almost 3 times during that period. And the important thing is, it is not only contributing to the nature, but also people. The benefits of biodiversity and forest to the local communities has been also increased. Along with these successes, the tri-arc landscape is facing challenges as well. The increased human-wildlife conflict, infrastructure development, and impact of climate change are some of them. The key lessons that we learned during the last 2.5 decades are the government leadership, community stewardship, and civil society engagement is a unique model for the success of conservation even in the high pressure areas. And a visioned programmatic approach with a long-term engagement is rather important for achieving conservation outcomes. We would like to thank to the UN Decade for recognizing the tri-arc landscape as the World Restoration Flagship. It will be a stepping stone to upscale restoration and conservation outcomes to bring the tri-arc landscape to the next level. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Bandari. So from the Terraisan Mountains of Nepal, we now go to the next flagship, which is with the small island developing states. And SIDS host, as you know, hosts unique ecosystems. And very timely to showcase the SIDS flagship because, as you're all aware, just last week was the 4th International Conference on Small Island Developing States hosted by Antigua and Barbuda. And so the SIDS as ecosystems are critical for marine biodiversity and strategic importance for migratory species, home to many endemic species. But they're also, and the biodiversity is also very fragile, under threat, and a situation exacerbated by vulnerabilities and challenges which are specific to the ecosystems of SIDS. And that's why it's very interesting to learn about what they have done, what they have addressed, and what can we learn from them. In 2019, during a midterm review of the SIDS Accelerated Modalities of Action pathway, and then in 2020 analysis conducted by the high-level panel on the sustainable ocean economy, 3 SIDS from around the world have joined forces, Comoros, Santa Lucia, and Vanuatu, and have since then been developed and supported by UNEP, UNDESA, and FEO. So the SIDS Restoration Flagship aims to strengthen the SIDS capacity in integrating marine and coastal ecosystem restoration, conservation and economic recovery, and sustainable growth through a connected ridge-to-reef approach. We're very happy today that representing one of the 3 SIDS locations is Vanuatu. And from FEO, we have William Isaac, who will tell us what they have done in Vanuatu as far as connecting the SIDS agenda to the Decade for Ecosystem Restoration. Mr. Wasak, are you online?
Hi.
Can you hear us?
Yeah, I can hear you. Can
Thank
you hear
you.
me?
Yes, sure. And greetings. It's probably afternoon for you already in Vanuatu. We're all very interested to know, as I've said earlier, in the case of Vanuatu, how have you translated the ecosystem restoration decade agenda through the SIDS flagship? Tell us about what Vanuatu has done, what are the challenges, and what could we learn, not only for SIDS countries, but in general for all of us, as far as the decade agenda is concerned. Please.
Thank you very much, moderator, and greetings from Vanuatu and happy World Environment Day to everyone. Vanuatu, as other SIDS countries, is affected by climate change in different ways, range from sea level rise to intense cyclones, and that affect the fundamental human rights of the coastal communities and inland communities, such as access to clean drinking water, loss of coastal and inland ecosystems. On top of those climate impacts, the communities also contributing to the loss of biodiversity and ecosystem, to struggle for survival and socioeconomic development, and for their livelihood. SID's flagship in Vanuatu would provide learning and opportunities on ecosystem restoration, and will enable communities to continue to use their environment and natural resources, at the same time protect and restore it as actions to reduce climate impact and uplifting communities' livelihood. In Vanuatu, 2 sites has been identified for the implementation of the flagship projects on Malakula Island and on Efate. For our first consultation, the 3 approaches has been identified, and more consultation is yet to be undertaken to come up with more approaches that will suit the realities of the sites. At this stage, the approaches that have been identified, the ecosystem approach to restoration for aquaculture, which is the oyster and sea cucumber as part of the flagship, and the learnings that we'll be sharing on that is how those 2 projects can contribute on restoring the coastal ecosystem for mangrove planting, and also contributing on retaining sea level rise. The other projects that is been identified for the flagship was the blue and scientific tourism, which is the identification of those projects will allow communities to earn income, and also making sure that the research are advancing in specific area on restoring back seagrass and mangrove area for dugong in Vanuatu. In terms of the value chain, one of the value chain that is being identified and been now looking at on its development for learnings, sharing of the learnings, is the coconut oil to transform it into soap. At the heart of those projects, women and youth are the actors on the advancement of those projects for flagship, which is been also identified as the most impacted population in Vanuatu. This approach will contribute to both income generation at the local level, and will also contribute on local capacity resource mobilizations. The advancement of these approaches will also take into consideration the cyclone seasons, especially for Vanuatu as a country that is located in the center at the belt, in the center of the cyclone belt and in the Pacific fire chain. So we are so looking forward to share this learning across the other SIDS country, to learn from how Vanuatu will be developing the SIDS flagship for ecosystem restoration to enhance learning across the region and across the globe. And we are looking forward also to learn from other flagships initiatives across the other regions of the globe. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Wisa. And please stay with us online for any questions later on towards the end of the session. It's a nice segue from the second to the third. From SIDS, we now move through talking about coastal and marine. And it's also, from what I said right at the beginning, one of the things that's reframing the decade is that when we started this in 2021, we didn't have yet the Treaty on the High Seas, BBNJ. And that's one, together with the Biodiversity Plan, help reframe how we think about it. As you know, about 100 countries have signed the treaty, BBNJ, but less than 10 have ratified it. So please, I think it is part of our responsibility to help provide the enabling multilateral environment, not only to work on what already exists, but those agreements that still need to be ratified. So closer to home, Indonesia, we're now going to present another flagship on how the biggest island in the country battles coastal erosion. We're going to have a video that will show the work that's being done by Wetlands International in Indonesia. So let's play the video.
Few places on Earth are affected by climate change like Indonesia, the world's largest archipelago. Along the north coast of Java, Indonesia's most populated island, an estimated 2.5 million people live in high-risk flood zones. But the people in the district of Demak are rising to the challenge. By building with nature, they aim to restore the sinking shores.
Merehabilitasi mangrove dan hutan mangrove ini kembali ke kondisi yang sehat, pada akhirnya ekosistem hutan mangrove ini memberikan manfaat secara tidak langsung kepada masyarakat.
Itu sebagai pelindung alami sebenarnya untuk bisa mengurangi besarnya abrasi tadi.
Dari sisi ekologisnya, karena hutan mangrove adalah berfungsi sebagai habitat beberapa biota laut termasuk ikan, ini juga memberikan manfaat untuk masyarakat.
But there is a problem. Less than 20% of planted mangroves survive. On Damak's eroding coastlines, young and unprotected saplings simply washed away with the loose sediment.
Kegiatan kami diantaranya adalah membuat jalur hijau mangrove dengan teknik perangkap sedimentasi dengan bahan bambu dan paring. Harapannya dengan terbentuknya sedimentasi maka bibit-bibit yang ada di atasnya bisa tumbuh di situ.
Nah, pembuatannya gini. Jadi ini harus dibelah dua, tapi jangan semuanya. Waring yang untuk perangkap sedimentasi kita masukkan di sini biar bisa merangkap sedimentasi dengan kuat dan bisa merangkap bibit juga dengan kuat.
Kita meniru sebenarnya adalah perakaran mangrove. Jadi dia adalah bangunan struktur yang terbuat dari alam juga, yang kita kondisikan mirip akan mangrove. Jadi sedimen masuk ke dalam, terus air laut itu semakin pelan-pelan surut ke sana, tapi dia menyimpan sedimen. Dan si hybrid engineering pada umur tertentu itu bakalan hilang.
Yang target awal kami hanya 3,7 hektar. Sekarang ini pelebaran sudah mencapai kurang lebih 20 hektar.
The result? Over 70% of the mangroves were now flourishing.
Ini merupakan target yang diperoleh kita.
But more space for mangroves means less space for local communities and their fish ponds.
Ini untuk menghubungkan antara kegiatan konservasi dengan kegiatan ekonomi masyarakat. Hutan mangrove juga memberikan fungsi bagi kegiatan budidaya perikanan.
Thank you very much. We'd like to check that Mr. Apri Susanto Astro is with us online. Can
Yes.
you hear us?
Hello.
Datang. Thank you very much. And it's inspiring to see the video. And also it reminds us how important it is to address the issue not only of coastal erosion, but the potential of mangroves. Now, 2023, the first FAO study, which revealed about 677,000 hectares of mangroves were lost between 2000 and 2020. Just last month, IUCN released the first global assessment of mangroves through the new RID list of ecosystems, which shows 50% of the world's mangroves are at the risk of collapse in 2050. It's a very saddening map if you actually see the global assessment map. So going to Indonesia, Pa Apri, we'd like to learn from you. In your case, how did your flagship triggered innovation to reverse the degradation trend and scale up restoration?
Okay, thank you, Dr. We are delighted that Building with Nature Indonesia was invited to the World Environment Day celebration, and we hope our program can inspire others. Greeting from Indonesia and happy World Environment Day. Indonesia has one of the largest mangrove area in the world, accounting for around 20% of the total area worldwide. However, its degradation rate is also one of the highest, some of which is triggered by land use change and natural factors. The government and other relevant stakeholders have made any efforts to rehabilitate mangrove in Indonesia. And it is true that mangrove rehabilitation is not easy and has a low success rate, because sometimes the rehabilitation activities are carried out with poor planning and inappropriate approach, so that rehabilitation efforts do not target the root cause of mangrove degradation in certain area. Building with Nature Indonesia program is actually a form of integrated coastal zone management, particularly to manage of coastal areas affected by erosion. It is combination of smart engineering techniques and ecological rehabilitation, as well as the introduction of sustainable land use practice, which provide coastal protection, revitalization of aquaculture, and increasing the resilience of the community. Our strategy is to create a mangrove-based economy through building with nature, because a prosperous local economy enables maintenance of mangrove greenbelts, and vice versa, mangrove greenbelt provides coastal safety, enabling economy to prosper. The Building with Nature Indonesia program is designed to restore eroded coastal areas and restore mangrove in this area. Our main technical approach is to restore suitable land condition for mangrove growth. In this case, the level of land loss to erosion using sediment trapping permeable structures. The application of this structure is part of an ecological mangrove rehabilitation approach, which promote the restoration of land conditions so that mangrove can grow back naturally. The EMR concept is also an option encouraged by the program as an alternative to conventional planting technique for mangrove restoration in Indonesia. The program also collaborates with local communities, start from planning, implementation, to maintenance and monitoring. This community involvement is one of the key factors of the implementation of the program in the field, because the community is actually the main actor in the restoration of coastal area in their respective village area. Thank you.
Terima kasih, Pak. So we've heard three flagships under the World Restoration Decade, starting with the work in Nepal and the Terai on the balance between species conservation and sustainable development. We've heard the particular issues for SIDS, in this case Vanuatu, and we've just heard from Indonesia on the issue of coastal ecosystem restoration. We do have, I believe, 10 minutes for any questions or comments from those in the room and those connecting online. Those joining on online, please put your questions or comments in the chat box, and then our team here will read this out to share with the rest of the team. But we'll start with the first round with comments and questions for those of us joining here in the room. So those with questions, please raise your hand. Are we gonna? Okay, there's a mic. Please introduce yourself and then direct your question to any of our speakers this morning. Thank you very much. Yes.
Yes, hello, good morning. My name is Liliana Ferrer. I'm the newly appointed Mexican ambassador to Thailand. Very nice to meet you. This is a wonderful event and happy Environmental Day. I was particularly struck by the successful experience in Indonesia. As you well know, we have a lot of mangroves in Mexico, in the Yucatan Peninsula. And because of the development we've had in the touristic sector in the Cancun area, many of our mangroves are also very much in danger. So my question is, are there any exchange of best practices of Southeast Asia, in the Asia region, and the success you've had with other parts of the world? I'm very much looking forward to engaging and designing a work agenda with Thailand, and this would be a wonderful opportunity with ESCAP and the United Nations to work on best practices exchange. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Ambassador. We're going to collect the questions, and we'll just note to whom it's being addressed. And we'll ask the speakers later on to respond. But welcome to Bangkok, Madam Ambassador. As you may know, Mexico is not just a state member of IUCN, but last month, the City of Mexico joined us as a subnational government member. And we had a regional conservation forum in a very nice park, right in the center of Mexico City. Thank you very much. Any other questions, please, from the back or right in front? If not, then I'm going to give the floor back to Indonesia. Pak Apri, there was a question from Madam Ambassador from Mexico. Any other experiences more broadly that you can share, or maybe from Wetlands International?
Okay, thank you for the question. Actually, also now continuing our program because we already finished in 2021, and we continue to other initiative which we call Building with Nature Asia initiative. And under this program, we still develop some activities, which one of it is try to documenting the best practice that we implement in Indonesia, because we talk about the lesson learned. We don't only not only talking about the successful, but we also want to share the challenge, because we can also learn from other area how to face with this challenge. So we already have planned to document this best practice in Indonesia, and we will be very happy if UN under this UN Decade Ecosystem Restoration can facilitate how to share or exchange the best practice with other location, with other country in the region. Thank you.
Thank you, Pak Apri. Please keep your camera on. And we also request our two other speakers, Dr. Bandari and Mr. Wisak, please turn on your camera so we can see you and for you to respond to any of the questions. Shaila?
Thank you. I wanted to also follow up on the question we just heard from the Madam Ambassador from Mexico in relation to the exchange, South-South knowledge exchange. This is also part of the ambition of the UN Decade itself, the task force on best practices, but also on others. So in that sense, the quick answer would be yes. On the particular proposal on Thailand and engaging, I think this is something maybe we could further discuss bilaterally, UNEP, ESCAP, and FAO as appropriate. Thank you very much for the proposal.
Thank you very much. Are there any other comments or questions from within the room? Otherwise, we'll check for anything that's coming in the chat box. Yeah, okay. So could you read any comments or questions from the chat box?
So on the chat, we have a hand raised from Ilyas Animon from FAO. Unfortunately, Ilyas, we cannot open the microphone apparently for participants that are remotely connecting. However, we encourage you to type your question in the chat. And I want to take that opportunity to also read the comment that you've provided, which is FAO, UNEP, UNDP, IUCN, ITTO, and other 21 partners are shaping the program framework Restoring and Sustaining Landscapes Together in Asia, or Resolved Asia, to help restore at least 100 million hectares in the region. This is to work closely together to help countries meet their commitments. And so he mentions that we need to scale up our efforts and create a regional restoration movement. So maybe he will be willing to follow up on that question, but please, Ilyas, make sure to ask the question directly in the chat. And then we have a comment from Anbar, or rather a question that is a very inspirational question, I believe. And Anbar mentions that he is an aware 16-year-old student, always trying to make his colleagues aware of the rising need to conserve the environment, plant trees, etc. And he mentions that the participation of youth is very important, and asks how he can involve and help other students and school to work towards these alarming issues. And so youth is also a very central problem to our central audience to the UN Decade. So I'm sure that you will all have very insightful answers to provide.
Thank you very much. And indeed, it's very good that Ilyas highlighted that this is a much broader partnership than just the session today, which is between FAO, UNEP, and IUCN, many other international organizations and NGOs. And the second question refers to youth and the other sectors that we need to reach out to. So in recognition, since we had Reno, is Reno still in the room? Anybody from UNDP? And because here, right in front of me is Sangmin, so maybe we give the opportunity for both UNDP and ESCAP in terms of their own reflection of what they've heard today, and maybe sharing with us your own initiatives around the ecosystem restoration, and maybe if it's connected to youth or any other specific sectors that need to be brought into the collaboration. So sorry, Sangmin, I'm putting you on the spot.
Thank you. My name is Sangmin Nam. I am Director of Environmental Development at ESCAP. Unlike UNDP and IUCN, we don't have a really field project for ecosystem restoration, but we are currently working with the Maldives, Indonesia, and Bangladesh for their national assessment of coastal ecosystem in support of their investment opportunity. That's one. And the colleague from Vanuatu and Indonesia, they highlighted this coastal ecosystem management. And we are going to have a ocean-based climate action regional dialogue on 19 September, which is one of the focus of this regional dialogue on ocean-based climate action will be coastal ecosystem. So connecting biodiversity and also climate action. So I'm hoping that you have also opportunity to join in person or virtually. And this will be also opportunity for us to develop a new regional process that connect these two important agenda. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sang-Ming. Do we still have UNDP in the room? If not, we'll leave the opportunity for one last comment or question to anybody to wrap up this very exciting session today. Not only from an institutional point of view, your own personal reflection about the whole ecosystem restoration decade. Yes, oh, sorry, please. There's a hand on the other side.
Yes, good morning, everyone. Thanapon from SCI. Maybe I would like to ask about the speed of restoration. You know, from different flagship project. You know, you have different time frame, but again, I think this is very important issue to deal with the development. I can give example like you cut one tree, you take maybe 10 minutes or 1 hour, you know, but to restore it, it may take 10 years. How you bring this issue, you know, to challenge on the unsustainable development. Yeah, in terms of, can we speed restoration? Can we, you know, accelerate, you know, maybe this my question. Thank you.
Thank you. And I think that's a nice finale to close this session. And I would ask both Saila and Makika to respond to that. We're celebrating a decade. But we know restoration is not a decade. It takes more than that. But also the risk and the emergencies we face cannot wait for a decade. It has to be now. So the question is, okay, what do we do with the speed and with the timeline? The decade is between, you know, the long-term restoration versus the immediate needs.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. A very good question. I fully appreciate the impatience and wanting to see quicker action. Of course, we are bound by how can I say, biophysical constraints, right? I mean, we can't do the magic. And this is why it is so important to actually prevent, to not even have to go to restoration, right? To prevent and maintain, conserve the ecosystems as while we still have them, so that we limit actually the need for restoration, even though we do have to do that. And I think this is also part of the ambition of the UN decade as well. So it is not only focusing, I mean, or part of the restoration is actually trying to prevent it, and that is very important an emphasis to do. Other than that, I mean, to overcome the biophysical one is there are technical limitations on the policy side, and this is up on us all to create the enabling environment, to accelerate, to set up the financial or the incentives to also support the activities. But I'd like to stress again, really, that we also want to avoid that we go that far and focus equally on the conservation and sustainable use before we go there. Makiko, would you like to complement in any point from your side?
Yeah, thank you very much. Just one point. I think in terms of avoiding the degradation and the need to do restoration, I think now we are facing a very good momentum in terms of, for example, the biodiversity community. We have this Kunming-Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework. And I think countries are really reminded of the urgent need to really scale up their actions to restore biodiversity and ecosystem. So I think we need to make sure that this the efforts to stop the degradation and also speeding up the restoration efforts should be at the center of implementing these global level instruments going forward. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We've reached the 1 hour mark. I see Flavia on the side. We'd like to thank our 3 speakers on the flagship examples today for joining us online. And of course, in behalf of FAO, UNEP and IUCN, thank you for joining us this session. Now I turn you over back to Fabia for the next session.
Thank you very much, Dr. Campilan, and thank you to all participants in the room and online who have been contributing. So we are ready for the second session of today that looks at getting ready for the dry years. You may wonder why dry? In this country, sometimes it doesn't look that dry, but actually only 0.5% of the water resources on this planet are actually fresh water that is usable and accessible by us. So this gives you a feel of the importance of protecting water resources. Additionally, what is causing the risk and water stress and land degradation? Well, population increase, urbanization, industrialization, but also climate change, who's increasing droughts. So for all this, today, we are talking about the potential risks that our region is facing. And we are also looking at possible solutions to better manage our water resources and also to reduce pollution to our water resources, both groundwater and rivers. So with this, I'm happy to have today with us Emily Backer from ESCAP, as well as Tana von Piman from the Stockholm Environment Institute, and online, Ms. Tomo Kotani from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Japan. The 3 speakers will be covering different angles of droughts, looking specifically at risks, but also solutions on better managing our water resources and practical experience in Japan into mitigating and reducing plastic pollution. So with this, I'm looking specifically at the risk part. So I would like to ask Temily, who's the program manager for the Trust Fund for Tsunami Disaster and Climate Preparedness. That is a unique regional multi-donor funding mechanism that is administered by ESCAP. Temily, what are the risks of droughts in our region? And also, are there solutions we can implement to prevent the impact of droughts, both at the policy as well as the local communities level? Please.
Oh, there is a step. Thank you, Flavia, for the question. Thank you also to my colleagues from ESCAP Environment Development Division. It's a pleasure to support you in this event. You don't often have disaster coming in and highlighting and sometimes dampening the celebration that is environment. I might just move this step as well. That's okay. But my name is Temily from the Disaster Risk Reduction section. I will give a brief overview of where we stand in terms of the disaster risks for the region, but what does that look like in terms of drought and these dry years that we're referring to? So in our flagship Asia Pacific Disaster Report, I have a couple here with me today. If anyone would like some light reading for the coffee break, I'm happy to share it with you. But what we've been able to see is across the region, over 2 million people have lost their lives due to disasters since 1970. But where does drought fit in this? Drought we're seeing as about 30% of the people who are affected by disasters are indeed affected by drought. Where we see this significantly, though, is in our economic losses. Looking at direct economic damages due to disasters, drought is only sitting at 5%. But when we do a closer analysis at this, when we look at a volumetric analysis of economic losses and damages due to disasters, drought actually is quite drastic there. You can see 60% And this includes the agricultural sector, the geographic locations exposed, the people exposed, and the cascading impacts of drought, which are quite drastic. So it's wonderful to be able to join you today and highlight this risk that we face, but also look at, what are some of the possible solutions. But first, let's zoom back. What do we mean by drought? According to the World Meteorological Organization, let's read it. Drought is a prolonged dry period in the natural climate cycle that can occur anywhere in the world. Typically, it's slow onset and it's caused by a lack of rainfall. Sometimes we call this lack of rainfall consecutive dry days as one of the measures. But looking at some of the climate drivers for drought, there's dry days, but there's also temperature, the Indian Ocean dipole, the El Nino Southern Oscillation. So all of these factors really drive drought conditions. And as you can see in the other image there's a bit of a cycle. We go into drought, land degradation. We've also heard a lot on desertification, climate change. It's an ongoing cycle. And we can also see, and in some of the recent hazards across Asia and the Pacific region, some drought conditions actually heighten the impacts of other hazards, such as sand and dust storms, flash flooding events as well. And then they lead into greater hazards and impacts on food security, health, population displacement, and of course, water stress, which is one of our focuses as well today. But looking forward, Flavia also mentioned climate change and how this is evolving. For us in our team, we like to take a look at some of those climate projections. And we know that IPCC says, with every fraction of a degree in warming, we'll see an escalation of disaster risks. So how does this look like for drought? We see right now, this is our baseline where we are. And you can see on the left-hand side, the countries of population exposure to drought, a percentage of their total population. Central Asian countries, Southeast Asian countries, South Asian countries, as well as SIDS really are quite predominant here in this list. Large proportions of their populations are indeed exposed to drought. But looking forward, when we look at, this is SSP 3, 2-degree warming scenario. The red dots you can see there are where we see the existing drought risk intensifying. So we actually need to do more work to prepare for these risks. And the green there is where drought risk has not really occurred before, but we see it emerging. So the climate change is evolving how our land is, and we also need to evolve with it or adapt. That is really the question that we have for us. And so to go to your second question, Flavia, is what are some of those solutions? How can we mitigate some of the impacts of these drought risks that we do see and feel in this region? So for the 2024 SDG progress report, we see a real regression and lagging behind in SDGs 13, 14, and 15. Unfortunately, they're the ones that are so key to what we're here for today. Climate action, life below water, life on the land. And yet these are also the key SDGs that really tell us, are we resilient to drought? So on the left-hand side there, we've put 5 of our key adaptation pathways. And we see that in a lot of studies, adaptation pathways and investments in adaptation actually help us protect our sustainable development and also accelerate these SDG goals. So the ones that I've highlighted in blue there are the 2 that I think my colleague and I will focus on today, that we really do see such a high payoff, such a high return on investment, making water resources more resilient, but also what I'll focus on today. I'll give you a couple good examples of strengthening early warning systems for drought. But first, let me highlight, for those of you who aren't as familiar with early warning systems, our UN Secretary General said, all people on Earth must be protected by early warning systems within 5 years. He said that back in 2022, World Met Day, and then launched the Early Warning for All initiative at the COP later that year. So by 2027, we're saying everyone should be protected by early warning systems. But what does that mean? They're split into 4 different pillars. The first pillar asks the question, do we actually know what the risk is? What is our disaster risk knowledge? In this instance, do we have drought risk? That's a question we need to answer. The second pillar is detection, observation, monitoring, analysis, and forecasting of hazards. Can we monitor drought? Do we know if it's coming? Can we forecast it? The third pillar in the yellow there is warning, dissemination, and communication. Once we've created those forecasts, can we tell people about them? Can we warn people? Can we communicate those risks? And then the fourth one is preparedness and response. When you hear those warnings, can you actually act on it? Can you do something that will make sure that the impacts will be lessened? So this is essentially what an end-to-end warning system looks like. And we know that people that have limited access to early warning systems are actually 6 times higher rates in disaster mortality than those who have comprehensive early warning systems. So they do so much to save our lives, but also livelihoods when it comes to disasters. So looking at 3 key examples from drought, I'll give you a couple across the region. The first is here in Central Asia. We can see that right now 66% of the population is affected by drought. This is the hazard that affects the most number of people in this part of the world. And we see this increasing under short-term and medium-term warming scenarios. One specific location that's really important to know is the Aral Sea Basin. This is home to 51 million people across 5 different countries, but it has been declining drastically over the years. We know that the declining and desertification of the Aral Sea has also led to decline in crops health, also health of the populations. When the inland seabeds, the wind erosion of the sediment from the seabeds, because of high salt content and the toxic elements, is negatively affecting the health of the people that live there. So it's really an important issue to face, but one also to face together with all the countries involved. So ESCAP has developed what we've called our Aral Sea storyboard that really presents the risk, all the different hazards. I don't know if it will. It's a nice little animation, if it will play, but probably not. You can scan the QR there and it will show you all the different hazards that are there and the projection of the risks, their cascading impacts as well of the desertification of the Aral Sea Basin. But it's risk analysis like this that's now helping these countries to negotiate regional water policies around water resource management, ecosystem restoration, and that will help to lessen the impacts of this slow onset disaster. Let me take you now to our SIDS. Like in our previous session, we traveled around the region. I also share a couple of examples from around the region. So Flavia shared that I manage what's called the Trust Fund for Tsunami Disaster and Climate Preparedness. This is our nice little brochure, if I can do a plug. But in PNG and quite a number of other countries, I recognize our esteemed colleagues from Maldives is another country that's participated in this program. But one of the initiatives that these countries have been supported in is holding what we call climate outlook forums. Because drought is a seasonal slow onset phenomenon, often our forecasts for drought are 3-monthly, 6-monthly, long-term. So these climate outlook forums bring together all the different stakeholders that might be affected by the season and talk about, will there be floods? Will there be droughts? What are we expecting? Will there be more cyclones than normal? So for PNG, the Papua New Guinea National Weather Service hosted theirs, quite a few. And what you can see here up on the slide is what they presented about this time last year, their forecast for the drought. And this has benefited also from our FAO Vegetation Health Index that they've been using. And they presented to the energy sector, the water sector, irrigation colleagues, disaster management officials, geophysics. It was an entire range of multi-stakeholders that were learning about what the forecast was for the season. Not only were they learning about the forecast, they were deciding on what actions they can take to minimize this exposure. So in the next Climate Outlook Forum that was held in December last year, the Water PNG presented what they did to mitigate the impacts of the drought. You know, they shared that they were monitoring some of the reservoirs and the dams that were in those exposed regions. In the picture, you can see a dam with a new gauge that was put up based on this forecast. We also had the Department of Agriculture and Livestock share irrigation advice to farmers. and so many more different actions that some of these stakeholders were able to take based on this forecast. So here you can see pillars 2, can we forecast the hazard? Pillar 3, can we warn people about the hazard? And pillar 4, can we actually act on that? Can we prepare for that hazard? In one example. And then the last example, let me share, bringing us back to this part of the region, is from Southeast Asia. Southeast Asia actually is home to the most number of people in Asia and the Pacific that are exposed to drought. Also have an increasing water demand. 90% of the total annual fresh water withdrawal is from agriculture sector. And also we have a reliance on hydropower, which is also sensitive to drought conditions. So this has been an important topic, especially for the ASEAN community. So what we've done as ESCAP is we worked quite hard at this multi-sectoral economic analysis of the impacts of drought to present it to the ASEAN countries, which then led to the ASEAN Ministerial Declaration on Strengthening Adaptation to Drought in 2020, which is such an achievement at this high level. This has then also led now to their regional plan of action on strengthening adaptation to drought. And ESCAP has supported 3 countries, Laos, Thailand, and Indonesia, to downscale this regional plan and see what that looks like at the national level. But what I wanted to share with you today is not just this broad high level anticipating and adapting to drought, is what we've been able to do as well with FAO is link the ASEAN plan on adapting to drought with the ASEAN framework on anticipatory action for disaster management. So anticipatory action is really just taking actions based on a forecast. Let me just go back one slide because I see someone wanted to take a quick photo. There you are, sir. The anticipatory actions is really that last pillar that I spoke about. Can we do something based on the risk knowledge that we've received? And so when the ASEAN ministers came together and they said, what can we do in terms of adapting to drought and this anticipatory action for disaster management, they came out with some really clear, concrete actions. But I might leave it there for today and just leave you with this QR code. For all of the analysis that we've done and more, you can find on our risk and resilience portal and in the reports I'm happy to share with you. I hope that's okay, Flavia. I hope I answered your questions. I'm happy to take more as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Tammy. I'm confused with this step. Thank you very much, Tammy. This provides a great overview of what are the potential risks, but also what we can do through early warning systems. So increasing resilience to water stress includes also sustainably managing our water resources. And for that, we are very lucky today to have with us Dr. Thanapon Piman, who's a senior research fellow from the Stockholm Environment Institute and has experience in hydrology, water resources planning and modeling, sustainable irrigation and hydropower development, as well as climate change adaptation. He has also been part and worked closely on transboundary water management in his prior role at the Mekong River Commission. So Thanapon, in your experience, how could we manage water resources more sustainably? Can you please share with us? Thank you very much.
I don't need it. Okay. I a little bit over high than Thai standard. So first of all, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. This is my great pleasure and honor to be here as a part of everyone here to celebrate World Environmental Days. Normally, I used to contribute to World Water Day, but this is my first time too to be here. So please allow me to share my experience on water resource management. And of course, I would like to thank you, UNEP and ESCAP for this invitation. So link to Tamari's presentation. Before I jump into my presentation, I just try to share voice from real practice. Apart from the researcher, I also a farmer. Actually, yesterday I just came back from Surat Thani, southern part of Thailand, 600 kilometer longs. I drove back last night to be here because of I have to deal with the drought as well. I have durian farms in the southern part, and also mangosteen and rambutan. If you know, that area is very delicious. And exactly, I used to work on this field, weather forecast, rainfall forecast, hydrological forecast. I know this year is going to be extreme, on the droughts. However, believe or not, in my farm, 6 of almost 5 months already have no rain at all. My durian was killed by 10 trees. You grow it for almost 8 years to get ready for harvesting, but it's dead because of drought. And I believe that I do very well water management in that farm. But again, I have to rethinking, on this kind of new baseline of extreme event, in this climate change. That's why it's very important for me to have share experience on water management under climate change and development, particularly in urban area. And link to Tamari mentioned what I did to cope with drought. I installed the weather station. And that is maybe the first station in my community, that I would inspire myself to develop a forecasting system for community. Because not only my farm, many farm even more suffer than me, that they have no knowledge. They don't know how to access water. They just look at my farm. You still have water. Some farm, I mean, half of the farm was damaged by this drought in this year. So this is a real, and it's not so far from our expertise, So I'm very grateful to bring this on the table today and to share real situation that we need to work together to support people or to reduce this risk and stress on water and environment. So please. Give me a second. So yeah, bring your attention back from the countryside to the urbanized area like Bangkok. So today my presentation will talk about the groundwater and urban water management under development and changing climate. Next slide, please. So yeah, first slide, I just again remind you on the UN projection in by 2050, it's projected that the Asia Pacific will accelerate, turn the rural area into the urbanization, like 50%. Right now, we have 2.2 billion in the city, and we're gonna add more 1.2 billion in next 20 years. That kind of remind you what is going on in this region. So next slide, please. Yes, when we talk about the urbanization, you can imagine it's a lot of people, you consume a lot of resource, it's very dynamic, of the city, and it's common, the city is always have limited resource, and normally you bring the resource from outside the city to consume for the population. And water is a key basic need of people and key basic need of the city to develop a good city. What I would like to highlight here in this slide is, yes, groundwater serve half or 50% of water for domestic, but it's always invisible. It's always undervaluable. It's always, mixed with the big picture. It's not really explicit to talk, to deal with the issue. That is the key. And secondly, that link to this section, groundwater is also used as a one key solution for drought management. I give you example too. In my farm, I have a surface water, I have a ponds, but it's not enough. I try to think about investment on groundwater. I try to look at the company, call them, sorry, I have long queue until next year. You know, I did this for 3 or 5 company during the down period. You know, it means that not only me facing this issue, you know, many of people look groundwater as a one solution to reduce risk from droughts. And that is why it's very important that we need to understand about groundwater and how it's managed in the city or is the rural area. Next slide. This just show you that the groundwater vulnerability to the sea water intrusions and sea level rise, it happen around the world. So this is not only Thailand, not only Cambodia and Myanmar. I think this map clear very well. Groundwater is vulnerable not only from the overuse or development, but also threatened by the global warming, by the sea level rise. Next slide, please. But in contrast, when we look at the implication of groundwater impact, you know, particularly in the Delta area, I think one concern that you may heard in your life is about land subsidence, you know. So this show the hotspot of the land subsidence induced by groundwater withdrawal. It means that we overuse of the groundwater and it's caused land subsidence. From the problem last slide, you can see now the distribution of the land subsidence is mainly focused on Asia Pacific. So this should also bring another intention, you know, not only the impact of climate change, is also how we use the groundwater in our life and our urban development. Next slide, please. Bring perspective of global. Now I zoom down into the case study, you know, to give you example, particularly Bangkok. You know, we are here in Bangkok. Do you know what is the main source of the water supply in Bangkok? Where is it come from? No. Yes, Chao Phraya, correctly. Yes, Chao Phraya, the beautiful river across the Bangkok, is one of the main source of the water supply. What else? Do you think Chao Phraya is enough to serve water supply to Bangkok? Yes, it's wrong. Actually, water supply from Bangkok also diverse from Kanchanaburi. How many people have been to the Kanchanaburi? Yes, you know, Khoe Noi, Khoe Yai. You know, no people doesn't know that. You see, this is also important that we have to bring it explicitly that people in the city, you know, you enjoy life, you enjoy things, but normally the resort is not come from your own area, you know, it bring from other region. And link back in the past, the main source of water supply in Bangkok, it come from Chao Phraya and groundwater. You know, you can see Bangkok in 1980, you know, when I was born, the top one. Okay, and look right now here, 2000, even now 2020, I think not only Bangkok now, Nonthaburi, Pathum Thani, you know, Samut Prakan, you know, this city is expanding a lot. And if you look at the groundwater use here, it's increasing, decreasing, you know, time to time. Why? I will show you the next slide, please. Bangkok have overuse of groundwater in the past, and it's caused a very significant land subsidence and saline water intrusion to the city. This is a big deal on last 20-year issue. Go next slide. So that's why from that how the government taken on this issue, there are 3 steps that I can summarize here. One is to establish the groundwater acts and start limit the groundwater abstraction since 1984, you know. And from 1985 to 1988, they are very serious to start manage the groundwater in the city, put the zoning, you know, pricing, also important measure, you know, increase groundwater monitoring. You cannot manage anything if you cannot monitor it. You know, you can guess, you can use experience, but it's not evident. So that's why the groundwater monitoring is also important. So that's why this is second step. And the last step is also, you see, the pricing again have to increasing to, you know, manage the demand side. The issue in this region, I'm not sure. I experience in South and Southeast Asia regions. We look at the resource on the supply side more than demand side. So government always give the resource to the need, but you know the resource now is limited. We don't really talk about this much, you know. But I think it's also linked back to the policy. If the people need and you cannot provide them, maybe your voice next round is may not much, you know. So that's why this is very important to balance between supply and demand. Next slide. Similar issue happen in Vietnam Delta. Okay, so there are a lot of people there, 20 million to 30 million people, and they use both city urban development and irrigation, you know. And the main problem in Vietnam Delta is similar, is land subsidence and salinity intrusion. And now salinity intrusion is also even more worse because of sea level rise. So you have less fresh water, you have high level of sea, then salinity intrusion can go far into the land, and this also affect all the urban supply water and also irrigation water. So my point is it need to be take up into the action and also look into very carefully. Next slide, please. So, and you can see that this is cause the problem about land subsidy. And yeah, the main reason is also 3 things. One is human overuse, second is sea level rise, and third one is also land subsidence. Next slide, please. So I just give you another example quickly. Now in Vietnam Delta, they try to recharge the groundwater because it's overused, it's deficit, right? So they try to recharge the groundwater. How to recharge? Groundwater in urban is even more challenged. Why? Because we turn the land into the concrete. Maybe 80% of the city is a concrete, it's a pavement. You know, we lost the infiltration capacity to bring water to the ground. So that's why this is one thing that we have to think beyond the drainage, you know, beyond the flood management, how to make the water back to the groundwater system. And this is one of example, aquifer storage and recovery system. Okay. And maybe the last point that I would like to talk about the example, not only the quantity that we used on the groundwater in the urban management, we have to look at the water quality as well. That's also very important. And this is also, it's a big issue in the city when you have a lot of wastewater, you know. So next slide,ครับ. So come back to my job. My job as a researcher, we try to find a solution to support policy and practice. Okay. So one thing that we also bring this as intention in the region, in the Mekong, is to look at the groundwater governance in rapid urbanization area of Lower Mekong country. So this is a kind of the project that we work with 4 countries in Mekong, Thailand, Laos, Vietnam, and Cambodia to look at the city that have rapid development. And it found very interesting that in Thailand, as you see, is very advanced in terms of policy, in terms of monitoring, in terms of practice. Why Cambodian? Nothing much. You know, even the policy of groundwater is not exist yet. You know, groundwater is just very small division under the Department of Water Resource and Supply. See, you see the difference of knowledge, the difference of level of policy. This is also linked to the strengthening of groundwater management. Next. So I have another meeting tomorrow talk about the groundwater management, but in the economic zone in AIT. Just give you example. One thing that we try to adopt is to look into the groundwater sustainability framework, or index to show how vulnerability of groundwater in economic zone. So my last slide here. Next, it's just give you, it's a lot of good practice in managing groundwater, but again, this is area-based specific, you know. Groundwater issue in Singapore is different totally in Thailand and Vietnam Delta, etc. because of the resource and population is different. But I think this very good summarize that you have to look into the policy, you have to look into the delivering and service, you have to look into the demand management, etc. So we need many things, you know, to sustain groundwater resource. So thank you very much for giving me opportunity and a chance to share experience. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Thanapon. In the interest of time, I would like to give the floor to the audience here and online for any questions. Are there any questions from the room to our speakers? Online? Yes, please. Sangmin.
If there is no questions, Khun Thanapong, thank you for very interesting presentation. So you have already highlighted various policy interventions, including this monitoring, pricing, and groundwater licensing and recharging groundwater, and also your case, it's a lower Mekong areas, you know, cooperation. But on top of this, what would be potential areas of regional cooperation beyond maybe lower Mekong region? And the report you shared, I mean, this ADB report is 2012, more than 10 years old. Yeah. So wondering whether there is also new assessment and then also assessment of you know, this kind of best policies and practices which are available. I mean, with the most recent reports. Wondering whether you are also aware of that.
So thank you very much for the question. Yes, why I use the ADP report that happened in 2012 is quite old, but my point is still valid. That make me a question why it's still valid. Because we don't put priority for groundwater yet, you know. So nothing. The thing that they say, what we see in the current project that we have in the lower Mekong, they still talk the same thing, you know. Only the technology may be changed, you know. So that's why that is one thing that I see from the current practice. For the regional cooperation, that's very important. So that's why the SummerNet or the Sustainable Mekong Research Network see this also important to bring, let's say, the Mekong country, you know, to at least sharing the knowledge about the groundwater management, in example. And from this project, what we get the feedback, you know, from Cambodian is, can SCI support them to develop a groundwater framework for the country after they see other countries are very advanced, you know, in terms of groundwater management. Another example is like Laos. You know, they have a groundwater policy, but they don't know how to implement on the ground. That is another challenge. Another kind of experience that I have also that we are talking is about transboundary aquifer that across the country. Like I think FAO also have a big project now between Vietnam and Cambodia on groundwater management across the Mekong Delta. In example, that also can bring another intention for regional cooperation. Thank you.
Thank you, Tanapon. There's also a question online that asks, in light of the recent floods in Dubai, China, and other regions of the world, can rainwater harvesting provide a solution for water stress in urban environments?
Yes, yes, I would say yes. I would say yes. I would share my opinion from scientists and also from the kind of normal people. The big flood, like in Bangkok, I just skip back in 2011. Somebody heard about it. I mean, I don't want to repeat about the damage, but in terms of water, we see this is benefit because the big flood also recharge the groundwater level. That's one thing naturally. Okay. However, in terms of rain harvesting, I think this is also a key that I'm thinking for long when we use a term of security a lot. Why? Because in the past, even I think many people, when you was young, you still bring the basket, bring to the well, take a water bag to the home, you know, you drink it, you shower it, you know, but now you use the water from the tap, right? And you don't harvesting any rainwater anymore. And when the tap doesn't have the water, you start complaining. My point is this is a change behavior from the security, but it's not resilient. You become more vulnerable. Actually, that is something that also try to balance myself that, okay, security is good, but you need to be resilient too when it's insecurity or uncertain. So that's why we need to resume back on this kind of methodology or method to invest more rain harvesting and try to collect them separately from the wastewater, because now all the rain fall, you know, it's mixed between wastewater, so it's very difficult to treat, you know. So that is very important that I think it needed. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Emily.
Just to add one point is that there are lots of lessons to learn in terms of rainwater harvesting around the region, specifically for those countries that do not have that secure groundwater supply. When you look at some of the coral atoll islands, rainwater harvesting is their main source of water. So when you do look at investing into rainwater harvesting, making sure that those solutions are truly resilient, do our rainwater harvesting I guess, infrastructure at the local household level, will they withstand the next cyclone? That's a really important question to ask, because yes, we can put gutters on homes and give people tanks, but will it last from season to season? And that's where it's really important to, in those adaptation measures, no matter what we do, looking at disaster risk reduction, will it be resilient in the long term? And it does solve some of these other longer issues like sustainable water management. So there are lots of lessons to learn, especially from our islands across the Pacific.
Thank you, Emily. Thank you, Tanapon. Feel free to remain here with us as we give the floor to our next speaker online, Ms. Tomo Kotani, Deputy Director of the Division of... Sorry, there's some more questions. Just one more question. Okay, so please.
Thank you very much. I am Mr. Ri Nam-sung, a counselor and permanent representative, DPRK Embassy in Thailand. Yeah, I would like to ask one brief question to Ms. Tamily Baker, Program Management Officer in ESCAP. As you have already mentioned, the multi-hazard early warning system for drought is very important for member states. And if you don't mind, can you explain if there is any program for capacity building for this early warning system for the member states this year, please?
Thank you, Mr. Ree. Of course, just to share there's so many capacity building programs at the moment under the Early Warning for All initiative. The global pillar leads are UNDRR, WMO, ITU, and IFRC. But in terms of multi-hazard early warning system and forecasting specifically, World Meteorological Organization is our key counterpart that ESCAP works on. So relative to your region in the world, there's the WMO ESCAP Typhoon Committee, and that is all the East Northeast Asian countries joining together to look at the typhoon forecasting, sharing the lead times, and that's enhanced the capacity of all countries. So I know that our team is doing a lot of work with you right now and looking at how best we can support capacity building initiatives in your part of the world, along with your partners and neighboring countries as well. So there are lots of opportunities, and we can talk more in coming days as well to make sure that you have all the latest information on that for your country too.
Thank you very much, Tamili, and thank you for the good questions. We have online Tomil Kotani, Deputy Director of the Division of Global Environment, Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Japan, who will be sharing Japan's approaches to managing plastic pollution in the environment. Ms. Kotani, please.
Hi, yes. Good morning and good afternoon from Tokyo. My name is Tomoe Kotani. I'm from Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Japan. And then thank you very much for giving me this valuable opportunity to share our experience with distinguished participants for World Environment Day 2024 in Bangkok. Unfortunately, I am not able to see you face to face, but I'm very happy to see familiar faces even online. So today, I would like to explain Japan's approach to plastic pollution, including in the marine environment, with a focus on Japan's own experience and cooperation with UNEP. So next slide, please. So here is the contents of my presentation. So next slide, please. So first, Japan's commitment to addressing plastic pollution, G20 Osaka Blue Ocean Vision in 2019. The Osaka Blue Ocean Vision is proposed by Japan in the occasion of Japanese presidency of G20 in 2019, and then now already shared with over 80 countries. So this Osaka Blue Ocean Vision aims to reduce additional pollution by marine plastic litter to zero by 2050 through a comprehensive life cycle approach that includes reducing the discharge of mismanaged plastic litter by improved waste management and innovative solutions, while recognizing the important role of plastics for society. So next slide, please. So in 2023, Japan hosted G7, and G7 members are committed to end the plastic pollution with the ambition to reduce additional plastic pollution to zero by 2040. With this in mind, we're determined to, G7 countries are determined to continue and step up actions based on comprehensive life cycle approach. Next slide, please. So in the occasion of G20 in 2019, Japan has launched Marine Initiative toward realization of the Osaka Blue Ocean Vision. Then the Prime Minister Abe announced that Japan will support developing countries' efforts, including their capacity building and infrastructure development in the area of waste management. Next slide, please. So the Marine Initiative. What is Marine Initiative? It is to advance effective actions to combat marine plastic litter at the global scale focusing on management of waste, recovery of marine litter, innovation, and empowerment. So next slide, please. So now let me move to Japan's experience on domestic and international approach to reduce pollution, including issues of waste management. Even before the Osaka Blue Ocean Vision in 2019, Japan has historically and proactively contributed to providing assistance to developing countries in the area of waste management. So based on our long experience in this field, we have learned that sound waste management is imperative for reducing the discharge of plastics into the environment, and that an effective waste management should be established in 3 incremental stages based on country's development stage. Next slide, please. So now let me share with you Japan's own experience on waste issues. As you may know, Tokyo and other cities in Japan are, I would say, very clean. I often hear that foreign visitors say Tokyo is one of the cleanest cities in the world. People in Japan do not throw garbage away in the street. For many of people living in Japan, it would be natural to keep garbage with them until they find a garbage bin or even bring it home if there is no bin around. I would say there is only very few garbage bins in the street in Tokyo due to security reasons, but people do not littering. So why people in Japan are not littering? Of course, littering is prohibited by law, but that is not the only reason why no litter is left on the street. I personally don't think that Japanese culture has tradition like cleanliness from the beginning. So next slide, please. So let's go back to 1940s in Japan. At that time, waste was dumped into rivers and the oceans or piled up in the open, causing public health problems such as plagues of flies and mosquitoes and the spread of infectious diseases. Waste was manually collected from homes by carts, and due to the limits of human power, including the narrow range of action, it became more and more difficult to cope with, while having the rapid increase in the amount of waste. Furthermore, transporting and reloading waste to incineration sites or landfills created public health problems. In addition, although waste management was already obligation of municipalities by law, there was no well-developed system among stakeholders, causing of municipalities being in a deadlock against the spread of urban waste problems. The bottom left photo shows a landfill site called Yume no Shima in Japanese, or a dream island in English. Most of the waste was not appropriately treated, generating problems such as spontaneous combustion caused by garbage fermentation gases, as well as foul odors and plagues of flies. Next slide, please. So in the 1960s, while Japan started to enjoy the benefits of high economic growth, the new business style of mass production and mass consumption was grown as well. That led to a further increase and a diversification of waste generation in cities. With the rise in manufacturing activity, new types of waste discharged from manufacturing process. Some of such waste was discarded or otherwise disposed of without any proper treatment. Such new types of waste were defined as industrial waste, and it required different measures from those for municipal solid waste generated from households. As some companies did not have their own disposal sites, it causes illegal dumping of the waste in urban areas, such as roadsides or riverbanks. In the same period, serious air and water pollution also were occurred in many local areas due to improper waste management. Therefore, solving those serious environmental problems in urgent manner became the national top priority, and many environmental regulations were introduced. Next slide, please. So during the Japan's rapid economic growth period, Tokyo was faced with the deterioration of the environment in areas around landfills. Elementary school students near landfill sites were suffering from flies. This was due to the fact that large amounts of waste were landfilled without proper treatment, because the construction of waste incineration facilities was bogged down by residents' opposition. The living environment of residents in the area around landfills was seriously suffered by those odors or mosquitoes. So feeling a strong sense of crisis, the Tokyo Metropolitan Governor declared a war against waste in September 1971, stating that impending waste crisis was threatening the lives of residents of Tokyo. Things eventually started to move toward resolution as a result of implementation of strategies, including promoting the construction of waste processing factories and landfills. So the war against waste heightened the awareness of that waste is serious issues for daily life. As a result, people recognized the importance of government organizations and residents working together to promote waste management. The government promoted the development of waste management facilities that are friendly to the surrounding environment and community. So next slide, please. So currently, the management of municipal solid waste in Japan is a system that combines with well-experienced processes. Here is you can see the first phase, discharge of waste, and then collection and intermediate treatment and recycling, and finally landfill. Next slide, please. Residents put the waste out of the allocated day for each waste type at the appointed collecting places, such as specific roadsides or specifically built collection stations. Collecting places are maintained by local residents and the municipality. Next slide, please. So this is collection. Collection vehicles of a municipality collect waste from the collecting place, usually in the morning, so you don't often see collected waste in the street. Next slide, please. So collected waste is systematically and quickly transported to a treatment plant, such as a waste-to-energy plant built by municipality. Next slide, please. So finally, residue from the intermediate treatment, which is incineration ash, is landfilled. So these are our history and the current system of waste management of our household and industry waste. Next slide, please. So now let me move to the item number 3, actually not 2, or international cooperation by the government of Japan. Here is a policy of Japan about plastic pollution, including in the marine environment. So providing developing country with a wide range of assistance through bilateral and multilateral cooperation, including ODA, and assistance through international organizations to develop capacities and institutions. That's first. And the second, formulate national action plans to address marine plastic litter. And the third, introduce quality environment infrastructure, such as waste disposal facilities, including recycling facilities and waste to energy plants, and develop relevant human resources. Next slide, please. So one of the cooperation by government of Japan is tackling plastic pollution with UNEP from 2019 to 2025. The project is called Countermeasure for Plastic-Free Rivers and Mekong Pacific Project. Next slide, please. So what has been done? Japan's support since 2019. So we have successfully worked with UNEP since 2019 to develop methodologies and monitoring systems for plastic pollution in riverine environments in Asia and the Pacific. Through Project Countermeasure 1 and 2, and through Mekong Pacific Project, UNEP, with support of Japan, and in collaboration with regional and national partners, has strengthened scientific knowledge based on plastic pollution. Scientific knowledge based on plastic pollution in the water systems in the region. Second, developed an extensive network of policy makers, academics, and the private sectors to facilitate joint efforts in reducing plastic pollution. And then third, facilitated capacity building for riverine pollution monitoring among local communities. Next slide, please. So this is the details of each action here in the pictures. So first, strengthened scientific knowledge based on plastic pollution in the water system. So these pictures, this is developed a variety of new technical tools for plastic pollution monitoring, such as drone survey, heat map with a 360-degree camera, mobile application survey, and a CCTV installation. So these pictures is plastic identification by a drone survey. Next slide, please. And another example can be seen in the photos. This is promoted the survey with 360-degree camera to develop a plastic pollution heat map, which were also combined with the existing programs such as cleanup activity or routine water monitoring work. Next slide, please. And then second, developed an extensive network of policymakers, academics, and the private sector to facilitate joint efforts in reducing plastic pollution. Many stakeholders in Mekong region have participated in the plastic pollution survey. The survey itself was a good opportunity for their capacity development, as well as for the awareness. about 500 students in the Mekong region were engaged in annotation work of the plastic items for the machine learning. So next slide, please. And then this is conducted microplastic sampling in collaboration with local governments, academia, communities, which were the first use case of albatross in the Mekong region. So albatross is a microplastic sampling tool, which can indicate a correlation showing an increase in the density of microplastic from upstream to downstream in the Mekong River. So next slide, please. And then another technique introduced. This is installed CCTVs to monitor plastic pollution in waterways in collaboration with municipalities and the local communities. Initiated the activity by the leadership of local governments to promote science-based interventions to stop plastic pollution. Next slide, please. So finally, this is facilitate capacity building for riverine pollution monitoring among local communities. This is enhanced capacity building for among stakeholders in the Mekong region through the development of plastic pollution leakage scenarios, including methodology and technical tools. So next slide, please. So from now on, I'd like to explain ongoing project in cooperation with UNEP. What we have learned from the previous project is that the limited availability of reliable data on plastic pollution in terrestrial and aquatic ecosystems remains a significant challenge. While scaling the work on free rivers in Asia Pacific, the government of Japan is already extended its support to addressing plastic pollution in coastal and marine ecosystem in the Pacific Islands. In collaboration with partners, UNEP is working with Pacific Island countries to develop methodologies, building capacity, and improving data availability on coastal marine plastic pollution. Next slide, please. So on March 8th in 2024, UNEP held a workshop titled Plastic Pollution Monitoring in the Pacific Islands, inviting government officers from 7 Pacific countries. The workshop aimed to showcase recent advancement in cutting-edge technologies and citizen science methods for monitoring plastic pollution. It discussed how these pioneering technologies could be effectively utilized in Pacific countries to design and execute comprehensive monitoring plans. So next slide, please. So finally, today I shared with you our own experience for the waste management as well as tackling plastic pollution. Waste management is not only for plastics, but for every waste that we make. So this issue is always related to every aspect of our life, such as health, economy, and society. So waste always comes with us. And it is very important for every country to establish society where everyone is engaged in. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Kotani. for this very inspiring presentation. And it's also nice to share with you that besides the efforts of Japan on reducing plastic pollution in the marine environment, there's also big efforts being done by the city of Tokyo, for example, on ensuring good quality and conservation of water. How so? Over the last 100 of years, the city of Tokyo has been conserving and restoring the forests along the rivers that bring water to the city. Thanks to that, thanks to this nature-based solution, trees have been ensuring water quantities to be available to the city, have been filtering the water, so providing clean water, and have been also ensuring the prevention of soil erosion. So that's another example of nature-based solution, how they can help in restoring ecosystems. So with that, I thank you all the speakers today, as well as all the participants in the room and online, and I invite you all, for those in the room, to join us for the break outside of this room. Thank you very much. Yes, we will be all back for the last session at 11:35. Thank you.
All right, good afternoon, colleagues. My name is Lily Riahi. I am a program manager at UNEP in the Regional Office for Asia Pacific, where I'm working to help countries beat the heat through sustainable cooling solutions. I'm looking forward to being with you for this final session as your moderator. So earlier today, you heard about the successful cases from different parts of Asia and Pacific on approaches to safeguarding livelihoods and restoring ecosystems. You also heard about the impacts of that droughts will increasingly have for people in this region, and of the solutions to reduce water stress through sustainable water resource management. Now is the time to bring us, the generation restoration, together to restore the land on which life is dependent. We cannot turn back time, but we can grow forests, we can harvest rainwater, we can eat soil-friendly diets, and we can fight climate change. We are the generation that can. So now, to kick off this final session and continue with our celebrations of World Environment Day 2024 in this region, I am pleased to invite the Deputy Regional Director for UNEP Asia and Pacific Office, Marlene Neeson, to the stage. Thanks.
I'm very happy there's a box here. Good morning, everybody, and happy World Environment Day. I sent out to all my friends and family, happy World Environment Day. And I got back, there's nothing happy about it. And I sort of went, huh? Because this is one of my favorite days of the year. And I'll tell you why this is one of my favorite days of the year. Because it's a day, I think about environmental issues every day. So it's not that it's just once a year, but this is the day where I reflect on how great the natural environment is. And I give gratitude to the environment for all that it gives to us: clean air, water, food. And it's also a day that I get to speak publicly about some of the solutions and answers on how we can save the environment and keep it sustainable. So I will stick to Happy World Environment Day. I'm pleased to welcome all of you here to the final session of the Asia Pacific Regional Commemoration of World Environment Day 2024. We at the United Nations Environment Program are grateful for your participation and your enthusiasm. The sessions this morning have been filled with engaging exchanges around natural environment, breaking down the challenges and looking for solutions.
Very bad. I think it would be the generator.
All right. So this is, and as I mentioned, this is precisely what the World Environment Day is about: raising awareness and driving action It's a chance for stakeholders to renew their commitments and to inspire others. World Environment Day 2024 is focused on restoring land, halting desertification, and boosting drought resilience. We are calling the global community to be part of generation restoration, to act through the community, their group, their business, their government, for healthy lands and soils. Landscapes here in the Asia and Pacific region and around the world are under threat from the triple planetary crisis: the crisis of climate change, the crisis of nature and biodiversity loss, and the crisis of chemicals and waste, pollution and waste. Climate change worsens desertification and land degradation through increased frequency and severity of droughts, heat waves, and more. Pollution harms the waterways that nourish land, and unsustainable consumption and production fuel these intertwined crises. When we speak about the importance of land, we are really speaking about the entire web of nature, because the health of the land is not just about soils. It's about the bees, birds, butterflies, and other pollinators that support some 3/4 of the world's fruit and seed crops. It's about the lakes and rivers that sustain the water cycles that keep land fertile. It is about urban trees that can help cool cities that are struggling with heat waves. As you've heard this morning, the consequences of inaction on these issues that affect land are dire. The decline of soil productivity linked to erosion, depletion, and pollution negatively impacts food security, livelihoods, and health, especially for the world's most vulnerable people. But as you've heard, nature has a stunning ability to bounce back. Examples of this around the Asia and Pacific region. In China, there's an initiative that has restored over 2 million hectares with an aim of restoring 10 million by 2030. In Nepal, the restoration of forest and other measures in the Teria Arak landscape have improved livelihoods of some 500,000 households. And Vanuatu was recognized 2022 World Restoration Flagship alongside Comoros and St. Lucia for the action these small island developing states are taking to revive coastal and inland ecosystems. Shortly, you will have the opportunity to watch the premiere film about the Living Indus initiative and to learn about its achievements and its ambitious goals for communities and for nature. We also look forward to hearing about ecosystem action at the subnational level from our friends at the Bangkok Metropolitan Administration. Later in the sessions, you will be tested on facts and figures, my favorite session, with a chance to win some nature-themed prizes, and I've been told I'm not allowed to compete in this quiz. It should be an exciting hour ahead, and on behalf of the United Nations Environment Programme, I would like to express my sincere gratitude to all of you, and we hope that you enjoy the session and that you have a wonderful World Environment Day. Thank you.
I think we're supposed to see a video on Generation Restoration Challenge. No? Oh, okay.
I'm a boomer. Of course, my preferred screen time is the big one, in 4K, against the wall.
I am a rapper, Frida Amani. Of course, I'm great with the mic like I invented it.
And I'm a member of Gen X, so of course I'm pessimistic and over it and cynical.
I'm a supermodel. Of course I get to wear designer clothes.
But I'm also Generation Restoration.
Generation Restoration.
So of course I am inspiring people to become environmental protectors.
Using my rhymes
to help raise awareness about the climate crisis.
让更多的人关注环境问题。
So of course, it is up to all of us to take action. We are Generation Restoration.
We are Generation Restoration.
We are Generation Restoration.
I'm asking everyone to join the movement to restore our planet. We are Generation Restoration.
So first, thank you, Marlene, for reminding us why World Environment Day is a day of celebration and a focus on solutions, despite the many things we face. So thank you for that. And I think you can still play in World Environment Day Challenge, although you might be a winner, so maybe you won't get a prize if it's skewed. And the video that you just saw, of course, is part of the Generation Restoration Challenge that UNEP launched to encourage each of you to think of why your generation is, of course, part of the generation restoration. So you can take part in this campaign by visiting the World Environment Day website, and I would really encourage you to do so. It's really fun to think about the stereotypes of your generation and why you're still part of generation restoration. So now I'd like to welcome Sang-Min Nam, Director for Environment and Development Division, to provide his remarks on behalf of ESCAP. Thank you.
Thank you. Good morning, almost good afternoon. Listening to Marilyn's speech, I feel like listening to poem, and her memory about this, also many other poems. I enjoyed listening to that. Also, that reminds me of my first participation in World Environment Day just 30 years ago as an NGO activist. Now, as a UN staff, I'm here to speak about World Environment Day. This morning, you have listened to various great initiatives in Nepal, Vanuatu, and Indonesia. So here, and this video, Generation Restoration, that also reminds me of, in Korea, then, these elementary school students were forced to plant trees. So now we see quite a different landscape in Korea. So here I would like to highlight new opportunities. I mean, we are talking about many challenges, but I see great opportunities. First point is we see better integration of a global agenda on this land restoration and degradation with biodiversity, with a global biodiversity framework. And there is strength, the commitments and target. And increasing interconnection we have seen between UNCCD and CBD. So this is my first point. And better integration of a climate change agenda and also biodiversity. This morning, some of our speakers spoke about also BBNJ. It's not only biodiversity protection within your jurisdiction, but even beyond the jurisdiction. Not only terrestrial biodiversity conservation, but marine ecosystem restoration. And also, we have seen this rapid application of nature-based solutions. This is not new. This has been always there, but now we are highly utilizing the term nature-based solutions. On the UNFCCC, there is also concept RED+, reducing emissions from deforestation and forest degradation. On the RED+, there are about 60 countries involved in this RED+. So not all countries, but of course mostly developing countries, but not all developing countries. Even if RED+ involved countries, but still it's a more specific geography-based project. But now with the nature-based solutions, for ESCAP, we have 49 regional members. Out of 49 regional members, 43 countries make a specific point on nature-based solution in their NDC. And 21 countries quantify the NBS, nature-based solution, contributions to mitigating climate action. And also, we have seen that most of the long-term low-emission development strategies in our member state, this nature-based solution is a key. Like here, Thailand, in order to meet their carbon neutrality by 2050 and GHG neutrality by 2065, they needed to increase carbon sequestration capacity from currently 90 million ton per year to 120 million ton. So Thai government is highlighting ecosystem restoration in connection with this climate action. So we have seen this increasing level of integration between climate agenda and biodiversity agenda. And this also brings the better connection between this global agenda and domestic action, so this country level actions. So many cases, global goals were not well translated into national target, but now many countries, even Saudi Arabia now hosting this, they were talking about the billion tree project. Mongolia with the vast desert, they are talking about the billion tree planting. So you see the progress in translating this global target into national action plan. But nevertheless, but seizing those opportunities requires strengthen the international or regional or multilateral cooperation. During next 20 years, we have to quickly scale up tree planting, ecosystem restoration. But there is no such regional or multilateral mechanism that can bring practices, technologies, resources together. In that regard, we need to strengthen regional and multilateral cooperation for sharing practice, for sharing resources, for sharing technologies. The second point is strengthening community-based land restoration. And we have seen the case from Nepal and Indonesia, Vanuatu. So community without community engagement. So the point from Nepal was the good combination of government leadership and community engagement. So that resulted in this good practice. So community engagement, community-based approach is quite critical. In that regard, we have seen also increasing international financing, especially under this voluntary carbon market. But many cases, this money, this fund is not well used in a transparent way or in an effective way. So we do need also enhanced transparency, effectiveness, and efficiency of such international financing in support of community-based approaches. So with that, let me conclude my brief remarks. Thank you very much for your participation today.
Thank you so much for reminding us of the importance that we see in the trend of integration between nature action and climate action, something that UNEP Executive Director Ingrid Anderson has also been prioritizing. And it's absolutely great to see that being translated in country actions, as you've reminded us today. So thank you for that. Now I would like to actually welcome someone who can show how this is being translated at the local level as well. The Bangkok Metropolitan Government, who will share remarks on the state of the world environment in Bangkok. Mr. Pornporn Vikitsid, the advisor to the Governor of Bangkok and Chief Sustainability Officer, to the stage. Hello.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. It's my great pleasure to be here on behalf of Governor Chachat Sittipan to celebrate the World Environmental Day, which is a great opportunity for us to share and communicate the work that we do every day to make Bangkok a greener and a more livable city for all. So this year is a very important theme, right? Our land, our future, focusing on ecosystem restoration, drought resilience, and combating desertification.
So I would like to share to you the challenges and how we try to solve this on the problems of the lack of green space and the lack of usable public area in Bangkok that we have faced for a long time. So the challenges of Bangkok, I think, can be said in three ins. So the first is the inequality. So actually, if you're around here in the old town or you're in the CBD, you feel like the green space is quite abundant in terms of wherever you are in this area or CBD, you can walk to a park within 800 meters or 15 minutes. So here you can walk to Saran Rom Park, to Romani Nath Park, or if you're in downtown, you can walk to Lumpini, to Benchakiti Park. So actually it's quite abundant and quite well covered. But if you live in all the other areas in the inner suburbs, outer suburbs of Bangkok, is quite populationally dense, but not a lot of green space. So the first in is about inequality. So one area enough, one area not enough. That's why we have to tackle this issue, very critical issue. The second in is the inaccessibility. So it's related to the first point. So if you want to enjoy the parks or spending time with your family or you want to exercise, some people have to drive a long way in Bangkok. Not only long, but take a long time. Not only the distance, but the time, because you have to drive through the traffic, and you yourself are also the traffic because you come to enjoy the park in the morning, same time as everyone else, but also after work and the evening, same time as everybody else. So we try to promote parks near to your home so that you don't feel like you need to come to the center of Bangkok to enjoy the parks. It's very important about the accessibility. And the last one is inefficient. We have a lot of land. You feel like Bangkok is all skyscrapers and everything, but when you look deep down, there are many lands that we can utilize into green space, but it's still some inefficiency that we haven't managed to turn that into usable green space. For example, under the expressway, we have to fight a lot with the authorities in charge. Some, they want to use it for other purposes. I mean, they want to use it as car parks, which doesn't really answer the problem of the city. We want to turn it into a usable green space. We want to turn it into a connecting or a linear green space. So I just came back with the governor from Singapore last night, and they have a very, what they call a PCN, Park Connectors Network. So they have two parks and how they connect the two through areas under the expressway, etc. This is what we try to strive. And we work very hard to get the areas under the expressway into BMA's control, negotiate with them, maybe use for 5 years, 10 years, and developed into a usable green space. Also, there's private lands which are unused. And with the new property tax law, sometimes unused lands are taxed higher than other usage. So people tend to get rid of the unused land and turn it into something else, maybe agriculture, growing bananas, lemon. You might see it in Bangkok in some of the very nice areas. You question why are there lemon farms or banana farms in center of Bangkok, but actually this is due to something with the tax. So what we try to do is go and talk to the owner of the land and say, we can take this land, keep even though it's unused, but there are ecological benefits. It's good for biodiversity, actually good for birds, good for animals, etc. live in there. We want to keep that, but we just do a little bit of adjustment to make it usable. People can come and enjoy rather than just being left unused and rather messy, and much better than turning it to something else which is not very suitable or very beneficial for the environment. So we try to tackle that as well. So the three ends, I think that's what we try to, it's our challenges and we try to tackle. And also, if you live in Bangkok, you know the city. The city is actually divided into 50 districts and two sides of the river. So at the heart of the city is the Chao Phraya River. To the right is Bangkok, where we are. And to the left, to the west is the Thonburi side. So actually the two sides of the rivers have two different challenges. So start where we are, is more developed of the two, and there are a lot of gray, right? The concrete jungle. The challenges is how to find new green space amidst all the gray area. This is one challenge that we have to do. But actually on the Thonburi side comes with another challenges. It's less developed. Still a lot of ecological and old for not so-called forest, but green space. But actually the challenge is that it's becoming more developed and developed. Property companies are eyeing their projects on that front because of the better infrastructure, and they're pushing the owners of the traditional green space, the one who use farms or even owners of like some private parks, etc., push them out because they cannot beat the market price. The property come and buy, and then they turn what it used to be green now into gray. So actually on the east part here, we try to find a green space. But the west part, we try to keep green space, which is even harder because we have to work with the local community to how to keep them strong, how to keep them resisting taking the easy money and go. Because that could be a very easy option for them. But we want to keep them not only for environmental purposes, but in terms of social. We want them to live traditional where they are, where their families grew up, not take the money and go live elsewhere. So it's very important challenge for us. So how do we tackle? I think we try to separate into 3 green projects. The one is the large area, so big green space. We try to turn something that is unusable or less other use into green space. For example, Benjakiti Park. So it's a long-term project which is finished in right now. So it used to be a tobacco factory. So we turn it into a central public park. Another one we are trying to do now is we have a landfill site in Onut. Now we're turning it into, we closed the landfill, we're turning it to a forest park. So working with private sector and academia to plant more than 50,000 trees and designing it into an urban park forest. Sorry. And there are many examples. Benjatat Park, or we call Rot Fai Park, used to be a golf course. We turned that into a public park. And many other, the big area we try to identify. So that's the first one. And then the medium size is the small pocket parks around Bangkok. I talked about the inequality in the beginning. So we need to identify where are the places where there are high population density, but no parks. We put everything on the map, data-driven, and try to find it. Now we know which district, and we have to focus on finding parks to make that median pocket park. If it's difficult to find space, we have to work with other stakeholders. Temples actually become a good collaborator with us. They have some areas that they don't know what to do with it. Sometimes it's concrete. The district office come and support them, make it green, make it usable. Actually, encourage people to attend the temples more. So it's a win-win as well. I mentioned about private land that we try to go, but also even BMA assets or buildings that we never felt like we could merge with green space, like healthcare center. We have 70 of them around town, right in the communities. And that's some unused land. We also turned into some green space as well. So these you might not see because they're right in the hearts of the communities. So very beneficial for people living around that area. So it's under the governor's key policy of 15 minutes park. So wherever you are, you need to be able to access the parks within 15 minutes or 800 meters. And the last one is the small one, so the trees, right? I'm very jealous of Singapore, and of course sometimes disheartening how well they have managed to keep their big heritage trees and provide such a great canopy for the citizens. But we also try to focus this. We have a policy to add more arborists, so that tree doctors as much. So when we came to office, we only have 1 arborist in BMA. So now we have 20 and adding to 50. So 1 each of the district for the 50. So they just come and be the person who analyze before the people who go up and cut the trees, etc., or prune the trees. Yes, and also we have a campaign to plant 1 million trees. So this is where a lot of people laughed at us in the beginning. So how are you going to plant 1 million tree in Bangkok where there are no space? But actually working with the private sector, working with universities, etc., we managed to plant already 900,000 trees within 2 years. And the governor have already announced to double the target to now 2 million trees, which is actually more work for me, but better for the city. And out of all this, I think we have several guiding principles that we have to do. So we have to be people-centric. So let's say the pocket park, we need to involve the communities since the beginning, so they feel like it's their own park, right? We don't want to just design and say, here you go, use it. We bring them in the designing process. So we have a concept called pop-up park. We have a land unused, undeveloped yet, and then invite them to come and, pretend that it's going to be a park. What do you need? Do you need playground? Do you need fence, etc., a bench, etc.? And then so that this is very important, because once they use the park and they feel like the ownership, they help to maintain, right? When we focus on building so many parks, actually one thing that is not sustainable is the maintenance, because there's so many small ones and who's to take care of it? If they don't take care, it becomes a place for homeless, etc. But if the local population feel like it's their own backyard, their own garden, then they help take care, become the people, be the CCTV, even no need to install, right? So we actually try to work very closely with them. I think another one is, partnership with academia. We have very strong universities and also civil society groups, a lot of active citizens, bring them. So we want to help them help us better. So BMA used to be like a fortress. So people want to help us, but so difficult to talk to the right person, sometimes talk, and then so disheartening, so slow, so much red tape. So I think need to facilitate, make it easy, so they want to help us more, because they already have that first step that they want to help. But sometimes in the past used to be some sort of like a challenge and people just give up. And the last one, I think, like, have to be sustainable. Quality control. When we do small parks, have to have the standard, because don't want just do it and no one use it, right? Also the trees, don't want just to plant and forget about it. That's why the governor focused on, have to plot every single one on the platform, so we know the progress of the tree, who's planted it, what type of tree, etc. So I think the green space is a very small investment compared to the big mega projects we do, but colossal and gigantic achievement and also benefit to the city if we do it right, and increase not only the urban heat problem, which is very important, but also carbon absorption, water retention is very important. Drainage, flooding is a big problem in Bangkok, but also air pollution as well. So I think it's a great theme that the World Environment Day is trying to push, and we as a small part of the generation restoration, hope to be a willing partner and commit that this agenda is something that is our top priority for the near and far future. So thank you very much for inviting us.
Wow. Thank you so much, Mr. Kunpron. I have to say that this work in BMA is really a inspiring example of bringing together, action on biodiversity and on climate, and in particular on climate justice, with focus on your 3 Ns. It's really focused on climate justice, especially as we heard earlier today from Marlene, saying that often it's those that have the least access to the means to sort of fight the impacts of climate change were actually most impacted. And by focusing on accessibility, inaccessibility, inequality, and inefficiency, you're really tackling that. I can say also that the ability to have access to green is really a powerful thing when it comes to heat mitigation, as you mentioned. And I think that can be the difference between saving lives. in vulnerable populations. So I really commend that. And it's a great thing to celebrate. And also just me, I can say as a Bangkok resident, with a 3-year-old, I can't say how grateful I am to have access to parks all the time, to be able to go and be outside despite the heat. So thank you for sharing those inspiring examples of what you're doing. And I hope that it can inspire other cities around the world facing similar challenges of how they can bring together biodiversity and climate in their cities. So thank you. And maybe another round of applause for Kunprom. So now maybe moving from Bangkok to Pakistan and its breathtaking views, we would now shortly see a video of, it'll be the first premiere video of the Living Indus Initiative, which was actually just published yesterday. And this initiative, the Living Indus Initiative, was actually awarded the UN World Restoration Flagship Award in February this year at the Gala of Hope during the 6th session of the UN Environment Assembly. You heard a little bit about these restoration flagships earlier today from Sheila Wirtz as well from FAO. So we won't go into that. But first, to set the scene, before we see this video, the premiere, I would like to invite Ms. Aban Marker Kabraji from the UN Development Coordination Office, Senior Advisor on Climate Change and Biodiversity, and one of the initiators of this initiative, to give us background on how it all started. After we hear from Aban's introduction, then you'll be seeing the regional premiere for the first time. So please sit back and enjoy. Over to you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Lily. Good afternoon, everyone. We've heard very good examples of how ecosystems assist in terms of the long-term sustainability of a country. But there are very few countries in the world where one ecosystem is going to define its future. And that country is Pakistan, and the ecosystem is the Indus River and its basin. The Indus River and its basin has sustained Pakistan for thousands of years, and it has done so because of a predictability of two major systems that impact on all the countries of South Asia. The first is the monsoon and its predictability. The second is the melting of the glaciers from the Himalayas, the Karakoram, and the Hindu Kush, and how they feed the rivers of South Asia. That predictability, as we know, with the impact of the triple planetary crisis, and particularly the temperature fluctuations that result from climate change, which affect all our weather patterns, is no longer a given. And as the unpredictability of climate change impacts the rivers and the basins, so too it impacts the future of Pakistan. Hence the program that is now called the Living Indus, which is a collaboration between the government of Pakistan and the entire UN system in terms of restoring what is going to be the defining ecosystem that ensures Pakistan's future and its sustainability. And the film you see now is a celebration of the fact that the Living Indus program won the recent World Restoration Award. And it will illustrate to you the kind of challenges that the basin is facing and the kind of solutions that we're trying to find to ensure it and Pakistan's long-term sustainability. Thank you. I think you can show the film now.
The Indus has been supporting the civilization for more than 5,000 years. It is the backbone of Pakistan. What we are is because of the Indus. So the question really is, are we in a position to support the Indus for the next 100 years?
Yes, we can grow glaciers, and we have the technique. It is purely indigenous technique.
The snow leopard is fully in danger in few years if we cannot control it. So our upcoming generation will not able to see snow leopard.
The flood not only washed out my homes and property, but it had, take off all my childhood memories.
Pakistan is one out of the 10 most impacted countries by climate change. And what that led to really was the culmination of what we're called the Living Indus program, which is an umbrella initiative. It is a call to action. The Indus flows from the north of Pakistan and then goes into the plains of Punjab via KP, and eventually it falls into the south of Pakistan, which is Sindh province, and then eventually into the Arabian Sea. The topography of Pakistan is very diverse. The mountains of Gilgit-Baltistan, the terrain that they offer is different from the terrain or the topography that you would see in Sindh. So the kind of solutions that we're providing through this Indus initiative also have to be contextualized to the particular area. And it entails within it a set of 25 interventions that are aimed towards the ecological restoration of the Indus Basin. Because of rising temperatures, there's a high incidence of glacial melting, which gives way to glacial lake formation. Now, these glacial lakes are held by natural barriers, which, if in an unlikely event weaken up, they turn into what we call a glacial lake outburst flood, which is a huge influx of water and debris and has devastating impacts on communities, on their infrastructure, on their livelihoods, on their properties. The GLOF program is one of the key interventions under the Living Indus program, and what it really looks at is increasing the community's capacity to respond to a disaster like GLOF.
Yeah, Shishberg Glacier, many of you know about it. It's very near to us, and there are possibilities that it will burst someday, and it will take all the water which is inside the glacier, and it may take all our homes and all those things. Here you can see the plain places. It was not plain. It used to be our home here. It was a sunny day, and I went for my school, and when everything was normal. But when I came back to my home, I've seen that nothing was normal. Suppose if we are in our homes and the flood came, what will we do? But having sirens, alarms, and protective walls, slowing down the time of that flood, and in that time, in that instant, we will get out of the home and we will rush to a safer place. Because the thing is that it's not all about, saving your property and your home. It's the thing that you have to save yourself. Your own self is more important.
Primarily, the GLOF program looks at community-based disaster risk management. It looks at flood protection walls, and it looks at a very important aspect of the GLOF is the early warning systems, which is a system that indicates to the communities before time, prior to a disaster occurring, so the communities are prepared in multiple ways.
For me, the special thing about this place is the mountains and the natural beauty. Everything is fresh and real here.
You will catch it. Ibex ready. They will run.
We do have a number of interventions that contribute to the wildlife conservation. So one of the great and pertinent examples of wildlife conservation is in Gilgit-Baltistan. It's one of the community-centric and people-centric approaches that is being used, which eventually generates income for the communities.
So the wildlife is very important for the community because the peoples are protecting them because they get good money from wildlife. They utilized it in their villages on different things like in education purpose, in agriculture purpose, or in another disaster something happens, so they use it in these ways. So wildlife has a good role in our community.
This is snow leopard species, and this is fresh one, and this one is old one. Old one. This is one, and the second family member they cross.
Actually, the snow leopard is showing the direction to their families, for their cubs and for their other members of his family. He's showing that he's going direction of downward.
This region is known as the third pole because of the largest glaciated region after poles. And glaciers are the most fragile sufferers of climate change. When we say glacier melting, it is the source of water that feeds all downstream populations. If there is no more there, then we can see the consequences. And secondly, flooding will be higher. Because of that melting, glacier lakes will be formed. And if, God forbid, any of the glacier lake is burst out, then we can see a huge disastrous flood.
यही मैं बता रहा था कि यहाँ पर हमारे पहले के ग्लेशियर थे वो काफ़ी नीचे थे, बड़े थे। तो मेरे ज़िंदगी में ये जो है वो काफ़ी घट के कम हो गए हैं, छोटे हो गए। यहाँ पर 80% जो है पानी इसी ग्लेशियर से पैदा होते हैं। यहाँ पर कोई चश्मा नहीं है, कोई नाला नहीं है। वो ग्लेशियर के पानी से ये आबादी जो है, ये खेतों में जो है हरियाली आती है, फसलें उगती हैं और लोगों का रोज़गार हो जाते हैं, लोगों के लिए रिज़्क़ का बंदोबस्त हो जाते हैं। तो 80% जो है पानी का दारोमदार हमारे ग्लेशियर पर है। इसलिए हम चाहते हैं कि कोई ग्लेशियर ज़्यादा से ज़्यादा हो और जो है वो महफूज हो।
So through various interventions under the Living Indus, we're aiming to address the issue of water scarcity. Glacial grafting and ice stupas are the two techniques that address the issue of water scarcity.
So glacier grafting is in fact nurturing ice mass in high mountains where the conditions are favorable. We look for permafrost and then put ice masses there. So there's grafting.
हमारे आबा अजदाद ने इसको ग्राफ्ट करके बड़े करके रखे हैं और हम इसकी अगर हिफाजत ना करें, इसको देखभाल ना करें तो ये गट्टे गट्टे चले जाएंगे, तो फिर यहाँ परेशानियाँ काफ़ी बढ़ जाती हैं। तो मैं समझता हूँ कि ये ग्राफ्टिंग जो अगर उन्होंने ये करके गए हैं तो हम इसकी हिफाजत करें। तो उस वक्त हम छोटे लेवल पर काम करते थे, अभी ये ग्राफ्टिंग जो है वो बड़े लेवल की है, हाई लेवल के काम है। अभी ये करते हैं कि हम ये कोई बड़ा सा काम करें, तो ये छोटे मोटे काम तो दूसरे लोग भी करते हैं, तो हम कहते हैं कि थोड़ा सा अपग्रेड कोई काम करें और ज़्यादा ज़्यादा बेहतर हो जाए। इनकी देखभाल करें, इसको मज़ीद एक्सटेंड करें, इसको मज़ीद फैलाएं, ताकि हमारे बाद आने वाली नस्ल को कोई परेशानी ना हो और हम कुछ करके जाएं ताकि उनके लिए काम आए और हमारे लिए कोई काम आए।
If we are able to grow a glacier, then it means we are able to support the glaciers melting rapidly. We are contributing in populating the glaciers, the ice masses, making the dry mountains green again and harvest water.
We have been able to restore 1.3 million hectares through various interventions and restoration activities like reforestation, afforestation, protected area interventions. And going forward, we're aiming to restore about 25 million hectares of the basin, which form around 40% of the Indus basin. We've been able to create around 82,000 green jobs in this initiative, but moving forward, we're hoping to create another 200,000 jobs by 2030. Not only are we looking at programs and policies, we're also looking at igniting a movement of different voices which can be used to save the Indus for today and for tomorrow.
This area of Pakistan, it is called the roof of the world, highest peaks over here. The most beautiful thing is the people.
ग्लेशियर एक मुक़द्दस एक मखलूक है वो भी, जिस तरह से हम जिंदा है उसकी भी थोड़ी सी ज़िंदगी नज़र आती है। अगर कोई अच्छी बात हुई और हमने उसके क्या नाम है उसके तक़द्दुस का ख्याल रखा तो वो बढ़ता जाता है और वो ठीक रहता है।
All the time I'm thinking, oh, I will go to the mountain again and I will start snow leopard. I will feel cold. It is feel very happy.
This is the place where you can experience love, joy, silence, snow-capped mountains, and it's a very tranquil place and it's a very beautiful place.
बहुत खुश होता हूँ मैं अपने काम से, बहुत खुश हूँ और मैं काम करके बहुत मुझे मुतमईन होती है, खुशी होती है और चाहता हूँ कि और भी काम करूँ क्योंकि इंसानियत के लिए और लोगों के लिए, मुआशरे के लिए और वतन के लिए, दुनिया के लिए कोई अच्छा सा काम करें, हम मर जाएं हमारे काम जिंदा रहे, हम ये चाहते हैं।
So I hope that you enjoyed the breathtaking views, but also the very comprehensive actions that are being taken to ensure living in this for future generations and to restore this lifeline for Pakistan. I think if you'd like to learn more about this initiative or other restoration flagship initiatives, UNEP has published a documentary series called Restore, with 2 seasons of inspiring examples from around the world. So all of these are available on UNEP's YouTube channel. So now we're going to switch to a quiz, the World Environment Day quiz, and see how well you have knowledge and facts on ecosystem restoration. So both online and of course in-person participants are welcome to join. And we do have some prizes for those who are based here in Bangkok. So shall we get started on the World Environment Day quiz and see how much you know or how much we know about the biggest crises facing our ecosystems today. So if everyone's ready, I will get your phone. I see everyone's ready to scan. That's great. So we can move to the first question. So approximately 200 billion, I think we can go maybe to the first question. Yes. Okay. Are you ready? I see that everyone's ready. So I went ahead because everyone's phones are up. Great. So the first question, approximately $200 billion are invested globally in nature-based solutions each year to promote a stable climate and a healthy land and nature. So the question is, what is the flow of invested capital from both public and private sector to activities that have a direct negative impact on nature? So please scan or go to menti.com and use the code 75541215. I see answers coming in soon. Is everyone finding the question? Is everyone able to join on Mentimeter? Yes? Okay, great. All right. So, well, not really even, well, we had 11. Okay, it's not bad. It's not bad. I was going to say not close, but not bad. So as you can see, it's 7 trillion. Yeah, every year, governments and private companies invest 7 trillion in activities that actually harm nature, according to UNEP's State of Finance report. And that was published in 2023. And that's actually 30 times more than what's invested in nature-based solutions every year. All right, but we're still celebrating solutions here. Let's go to the second question. UNEP and FAO have named 7 initiatives in 2024 as UN World Restoration flagships. Can you name 3 countries that from the Asia and Pacific region that won the UN World Restoration Flagship Award this year? Let's see. Oh, good. All right, everyone's ready. So please scan again and or use the code. I hope most of you have it. It's the same code as before. So 7554-1215 at menti.com. So we have 10 seconds. Let's see. 2, 1. All right. And oh, good. We know our region. Great. Okay. Yes, Pakistan, Sri Lanka, and Nepal were among the 7 awardees this year. It was Living Indus in Pakistan, Mangrove Regeneration in Sri Lanka, and Taraya Arc Landscape in Nepal. Great. Okay. So we recovered from the first question. Let's go to question 3. What percentage of the world's fruit and seed crops depend, at least in part, on pollinators, like bees? I'm not sure I would win in this quiz. Okay, so okay, let's see the results. Oh, great. Yay. That's a second. We're winning. That's 2 out of 3 so far correct. So 75% of the world's major crops benefit from pollinators, particularly fruits, vegetables, and nuts. Okay, on to question 4. So is this statement true? According to, by 2030, drought, land degradation, and desertification could force around 70 million people to migrate as the climate crisis worsens. True or false? We need some like music, contest music. Dun, 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 dun. Like, as you think through, let's see. So 3, 2, 1. It is false. So the intent is correct. There will be migration. So by 2030, drought, land degradation, and desertification could actually force 135 million, so almost double, people to migrate as the climate change crisis worsens. So yeah, intention, yes, but number was double. Okay, on to question 5. How many targets does the Cunning Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework have that were agreed in 2022? Right. Let's see. Oh, I heard someone whisper the answer. Yes. Okay, well, you still have, okay, let's see. How do we get? Yes, good, great. So yes, it has 23 action-oriented global goals, global targets for urgent action over the next decade. And together, these results will enable the achievement toward the outcome-oriented goals for 2050. under this framework. Okay, now, is this statement true? On average, ecosystems managed by indigenous people tend to be more degraded. Let's think. I mean, that was a little bit of a give up. That was a little bit of an easy one, I would say. Let's see. Okay. I wonder if we're gonna have. I hope we have enough plants for all the winners. We're on a winning streak. Let's see. 4, 3, 2, 1, and false. Yes, great. So, indigenous communities are the unsung heroes of conservation. 36% of remaining intact forests are on indigenous people's lands. And on average, ecosystems managed by indigenous people tend to be less degraded. Okay, question 7. How much can trees growing alongside city streets lower temperature in cities? This one I would know. All right. So we have 20 seconds. Is it up to 1.5 degrees, up to 2 degrees, up to 3.5 degrees, or up to 5 degrees Celsius? The code is not working? Oh, okay. You're trying 75541215. Oh, good. Yeah, okay, up to 5 degrees. Yes, that's right. Up to 5 degrees. It's really it can be between life or death, depending on how hot it is outside. So very important solution, trees, to mitigate urban heat, nature. Green and blue, actually, so not just trees. Okay, what percentage of food comes from soil? Is it 95, 85, 75, 65%? Tricky one. You will know, right? Please put your answers into the menti.com using the code or scan. I think there was a scan shown earlier. I know, that's why I'm like, please put it in the, okay, well, even with the answer given, it's 90, oh, the answer wasn't, it was 95%, actually, yes. Yes, 95%. Soils not only give us 95% of food we eat, but provide us, actually silently provide us with all ecosystem services and functions that enable life to exist on Earth. All right, we are getting, I think, to the last question. Number 9, is this statement true? Lakes, rivers, and wetlands occupy only 5 to 8% of land surface, but they hold 20 to 30% of global carbon. Whisper. True or false? I could hear. All right, but I'm attentive, so okay. We have still 16 seconds. Three, 2, 1, and that is true. Great. Yes, lakes help keep planets cool, which is what I was saying. Green and blue space is important, and absorb floodwater. And they hold, yes, 20 to 30% of global soil carbon, despite only occupying 5 to 8% of land. So protecting and restoring lakes is key to both mitigation and adaptation, helping ecosystems and humans adapt to climate change. With that, we are at the end of World Environment Day 2024 commemoration in Asia Pacific. And we will celebrate in a moment the winners as well. So I'd like to first say thank you so much to everybody. So all the speakers that have been here all morning to share their views and expertise. Okay, awesome job, Bill and Millie. Sorry, I can't ignore that. Well, we're going to give the prize at the end, so I'm going to go back to that in a minute. So we just want to remind everyone, this is such a great opportunity, despite all those sometimes hard facts, that it's an opportunity for us to drive action for ecosystems that sustain lives and livelihood. We heard many great examples, inspiring examples, including from the city and the metropolitan area we live in. So thank you for that. And just to remember that everybody now is alive now, whether you're Generation Y like me or Generation X or Generation whatever Z. We are part of a generation that is witnessing the effects, but is also the one that can be part of a generation restoration. So let's double down our efforts for healthy land and soil, and let's all join generation restoration. Thank you so much, and happy World Environment Day. And now we want to have a group photo first. So we'll have a group photo, and then we're going to celebrate our 10 winners, I think, right? But let's have a group photo first. So if we could invite the speakers first to come on stage for a group photo, that would be really great. And then after the group photo, we'll head outside for a sustainable lunch reception that's served just outside the venue. All right. We have all the speakers from this session on stage. Yeah, but if everybody's here from the whole day, that's great. I didn't want to put anyone on the spot. All speakers, great. Oh, everyone. Okay, I'm so sorry. I didn't. Yeah, so actually it's everyone because we're all celebrating. Sorry. Okay, so everyone on stage. Sorry for that. Okay, but we don't have true prizes for everyone, just for the winners. Okay, but where are the list of winners? Because I want to announce them. Pang has them. Okay, but do we want to announce the winners or anything? No, like have them come up here. No.
No, I think no, because some of them have been joining online and stuff. So
okay.
So that also I think a bit of time wise. Yeah.
Sorry about the photo script.
No, no, come on. This is
Happy World Environment Day.
Everyone wave. Come on, say hi. Thank you.
Thank you, Mary. Yes. Thank you so much. And winners,